Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto trained by Shikaku for Chunin exams. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by the Orange Maelstrom, link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. The sun was shining in the sky, the trees in the leaf village were in full bloom, and the birds were heralding the peak of summer with their songs. The air was redolent with the smell of honeysuckle. All in all, it was a picturesque day in the land of fire. The sort of day that came once in a year, a day on which even the most hardworking of ninjas would look out the window, sigh deeply and take a few minutes off to reminisce in the summer haze. The Leaf Chunin hopefuls gathered outside training ground 44 had no such inclinations, despite the beauty of the day. It wasn't the fact that they were standing outside a gigantic forest filled with looming trees that seemed to suck in all sunlight, a place where even songbirds didn't dare to venture. It wasn't the fact that they'd just been put through one of the most difficult tests they'd ever had to face, a test that had pushed them to the limits of their own self-belief and forced them to face their deepest fears and insecurities. No, the Leaf Genin were freaked out because of one Naruto Uzumaki. This was improbable because of the nature of the boy in question. He was loud, brash, and confident to the point of delusional. He was always up and moving, either yelling at his rival Sasuke, or yelling that he would become Hokage, or yelling at Sakura to date him. Or yelling that he was in the mood for some ramen. Naruto was always yelling. Which is why his peers were currently looking at him warily, with more than a touch of trepidation. The blonde troublemaker was crouched down on the ground, sitting in quiet contemplation and muttering to himself, resting his chin on the tips of his forefingers. The proctors for the second phase of the Genin exam were still explaining the dangers of the test. Kiba was allowing Hinata to bandage his cheek where the crazy lady had cut him with her kunai, but none of the rookie Genin were really paying attention. Their gaze, even the notoriously driven Sasuke Uchiha's, was on an event with even lower odds than, say, Kakashi Haddock being punctual or Mito guy wearing normal clothes. The combined forces of their looks seemed to break Naruto's attention out of his musing. He startled, overbalancing for a second before he righted himself to find all of his classmates looking at him. "What?" he asked. "Why are all of you staring at me like that? Do I got something on my face, or what?" The 8 other ninja quickly looked away, trying to pretend that they hadn't been marveling at him like an animal in a cage. Strangely, Naruto didn't comment. Even stranger, he stood and quietly approached Shikamaru, who couldn't help tensing up a little. "Hey, Shika," he said, his voice still uncharacteristically serious. "You're a lazy bastard, but you're really smart and everything, right?" Shikamaru frowned at the backhanded compliment. "Troublesome," he muttered. "What are you getting at, Naruto?" Well, he'd never minded the blonde ninja's antics, they weren't really close friends. If Naruto was asking for advice, Shikamaru wasn't sure if he wanted to help him, comrade or not, while they were about to be dropped into a Genin battle royale, and a single advantage could mean the difference between life and death. The point of this first test was to cheat, right? Asked Naruto, his eyes looking off into the distance. Ninjas are allowed to cheat. The expressions on the other ninjas' faces changed almost comically, including a few others who'd been listening in on the conversation. "You idiot, Naruto," screamed his teammate Sakura, secretly glad that the universe was suddenly being restored to order. The first rule of ninja is that they cheat. Deception is the key tenet to being a ninja. Her classmates mirrored the expression of contempt on her face, with the exception of a few. Naruto didn't seem put off by her volume, or perhaps he'd gotten used to communicating with Sakura through yelling. The pink-haired ninja was no shy maiden, either, no matter how good a front she tried to put up in front of Sasuke. "Deception is the same as cheating," mumbled Naruto, who looked like he was working on one of the questions from the first phase of the exams. "So it's not just stuff like hiding inside a shadow clone army, or pretending you're dead while using a substitution like Kakashi-sensei, or pretending to be a shadow under a shuriken." Shikamaru tilted his head at that last bit. By virtue of his massive intellect, he could already see where the blonde was going with this. The corner of his mouth tilted up. The Nara Genin lifted his hand up, forestalling another round of yelling from Sakura. "Yes, Naruto," he addressed the blonde. "Deception is the same as cheating. Ninja are encouraged to cheat and lie as much as they can within the limits of their mission." He sighed again at Naruto's blank look. "Every ninja cheats and lies as much as they can. If you have any advantage you can pull out, you take it." Seeing that he had the blonde hooked, he continued, his mind whirling through plans and scenarios. Ninjas game the system as much as they are allowed to, within the rules. At another uncomprehending look, he put it in simpler terms, or rather, in Naruto speak. If he suspected correctly, that was the problem the blonde was dealing with. Think of it like pranking everyone else as much as you can and getting away with it instead of being punished. Even getting rewarded for it, he added after a moment, enjoying the look of dawning comprehension on Naruto's face. Lazy bastard he might have been in truth, but he enjoyed breaking problems down just as much as every member of the Nara clan. Naruto's face lit up like the sun was penetrating the dense overgrowth of the forest of death, making Hinata squeak and turn away. The other genin watched, almost entranced, as his countenance changed again, a frown appearing on his cheery features. It was like a particularly large tree had decided to spread its leaves and block the sun from its natural domain, after all. But old man Hokage made me promise not to pull any pranks. Now that I was a serious genin of the leaf. Naruto said, squinting at Shikamaru like he was trying to figure out if the other boy was lying. Sasuke harumphed. He might not have been a Nara, but he was a genius for a reason, and he could see where this conversation was going. Even Kiba, who'd been part of some of the pranks Naruto had now stopped, was slowly beginning to understand. It's just like you to not look underneath the underneath, idiot, Sasuke said, his face set in a sneer that would normally have set Naruto off. The Uzumaki just turned his attention to his teammate quietly, still looking a little lost. The Hokage told you to stop pranking civilians and your fellow leaf ninja in a manner that might distract the military. The true order was to turn all of it against your enemies and on missions, and to do it in such a way that you benefit the village. You were just too thick-headed to understand, I suppose. Naruto didn't rise to the bait, falling into deep rumination again. Sasuke and Shikamaru exchanged quick looks, one smug and the latter grateful. The rookies watched as the metaphorical tree finally parted ways, and Naruto's face burst into a full-fledged, almost manic grin. I can still prank. He whispered. I can still prank. He repeated again, his voice trembling with joy. Sasuke put his hands on Naruto's shoulder and looked down at the shorter genin. The Uzumaki was continuously obnoxious and annoying, but the two of them had formed a bond over time, and the other genin was the closest thing that Sasuke had to a true friend rival. A rival who could only improve his own skills if he kept up at a commensurate rate. Naruto, Sasuke said, looking steadily into Naruto's eyes and ignoring Sakura, who looked like she was going to spontaneously combust. I want you to prank everyone and everything. Naruto's hands shook, his eyes actually welled up with tears. Sasuke, he whispered, his voice now trembling with a different emotion. He reached up and placed his own hand over Sasuke's own. You've made me the happiest man in all of Konoha. Sasuke smirked. Sakura and Ino clapped their hands over their noses. Hold on, said Kiba. If this is going the way it is, then I want in. Wait, what are you talking about? Asked Ino, rounding on the Inuzuka. Said Sasuke, smirking again. What's in it for us? What's in it for you? Will someone please tell me what's going on? Ino's voice gradually got shriller as she got more annoyed. Isn't it obvious? Asked Shikamaru. Team 7 is going to try and game the second part of the exam. And Kiba and I, he turned to Sasuke, want to team up for it. What do you want? He asked the Uchiha. Techniques, countered the Uchiha immediately. One from each member of each team. Whoa, dude, said Kiba. All we know are clan techniques, and there's no way we can teach you those. Said Hinata, blushing scarlet when all eyes turned to her. Maybe from our family. She blanched at her own words. Or Jounin-sensei. Hold on, said Sakura. You're going to bank on Naruto to get us through a life or death test in the middle of the exam. He's an idiot. Sasuke, I thought you wanted to fight strong people in the exams. Sasuke sneered. Really, it was like he had three expressions, smirking, sneering and nothing. I don't want to waste my time fighting the chaff anyway. The faster we clear the exam, the more chance I have of actually fighting strong ninjas. Most of the genin here look like they're nothing more than fodder to me. But wait. Protested Ino. Naruto. He didn't even pass the academy properly. He's the dead last of the class. And I was right above him, countered Shikamaru. Class rankings mean nothing in the real world. Besides, this is a test with two parts. Survival and evasion. Out of all of us, who has experience evading high-level ninja for hours while simultaneously trapping and diverting them? All of their heads turned to Naruto. Ino looked at him like she'd never seen him before. But that's just one part, pointed out Sakura. We still need to get the scrolls before we make our way to the tower. Naruto might be good at avoiding ninja, but what about getting the scrolls in the first place? The blonde in question stepped into the middle of their gathering. His lips were pulled up in a fashion many of them hadn't seen in months, and suddenly several of them were glad that they were on the same side as the Uzumaki. Don't worry, Sakura, he said, his eyes glinting, Sasuke and Shino just explained everything to me. He cracked his knuckles. Let's get rolling. 15 minutes into the 30 allotted before the exams begin, a commotion distracted the genin who were going one by one to collect a scroll for their team. A Chunin walked out from behind the screen, holding a kicking and protesting Naruto Uzumaki by the scruff of his jumpsuit. This idiot was trying to sneak into the station and steal some extra scrolls before the exam began. He shouted. Anko, as proctor, what do you think we should do? Anko smirked. Quick as a flash, she drew another kunai and sent it at the pair. The Chunin yelped and jumped aside, but it hit Naruto dead in the gut. He collapsed immediately and then poofed out of existence. All eyes turned to Team 7, who were still standing in line and chatting amongst themselves. Teams 8 and 10 were gathered around them, watching the proceedings in amusement. Said Naruto, turning around to see all the proctors glaring at him. Is something wrong? Would you guys stop? The Chunin spluttered. You brat. You thought you'd send a shadow clone to do your dirty work for you? To do what work? Naruto asked, looking for all the world like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. Man, Mr. Proctor, you're getting a little red there. Calm down, won't you? Calm down. Calm down. You little brat. I'm going to have you and your team expelled from the exams right now. Now, said Anko, suddenly appearing behind Naruto and wrapping her arm around his neck in a fashion that appeared loving, but was anything but. Naruto froze, but did his best to put a brave face on. He didn't succeed, thanks to the chakra pressure that felt like it was sliding down his neck and pressing slowly against his throat. Why don't we let the cute little duckling explain what he was trying to do? What's there to explain? Sputtered the Chunin. We all know this brat learned the technique when he stole the forbidden scroll from the Hokage Tower. He probably thought he could sneak in and get an advantage for his team, but he was too stupid to do it properly. A murmur went around the area. A genin skilled enough to infiltrate the Hokage Tower and learn a B-rank technique. And influential enough to not have his career ended for it. Several eyes looked at Team 7 in a new light. Chuckled Naruto. Prove it. The Chunin stopped short. Even Anko hesitated for a split second. Prove it. Repeated the Chunin blankly. Yeah, said Naruto, appearing more confident. Prove that it was my clone. It looked like you little idiot, what the hell are you talking about? All the ninja around the station frowned. You do know the transformation technique exists, right? Ino raised her hand, speaking hesitantly, like she was talking to someone slow. Naruto's an idiot, but he's not stupid enough to infiltrate an area looking like himself. Isn't it far more likely that someone else tried it and wanted to implicate a leaf genin? The Chunin stopped short, going from red to purple in embarrassment. What, are you in league with him? He finally challenged, even though his voice was cracking from embarrassment. Ino scowled. Please, with him? He was dead last in the academy, why would I ever want to ally with him? The clearing fell silent. Several foreign ninja processed the fact that the purported failure of the Leaf's academy was strong enough to steal from the Hokage himself and learn a forbidden technique. Everyone suddenly felt a lot more wary of the Leaf ninjas. The awkward moment was cut by the sound of Anko's laughter. Well, you sure made yourself look like a fool there, Sato. Looks like we've got a tricky bunch this year, don't we? She uncurled herself from around the Uzumaki. Very well, we'll let that one slide, she ordered, winking at the Uzumaki, who crossed his arms and shrugged. But be rest assured, I will be keeping an extra close eye on all of you henceforth. One toe out of line and I won't hesitate to drink a river of blood, she burst into laughter again. The killing intent that spread over the Chunin hopefuls left no room to doubt her supposed amusement. Even the Chunin who'd come out from the station to watch the proceedings quietly crept back to their posts. The genin took their scrolls and placed themselves at their starting positions quietly after that. Naruto got a dirty look from the proctor, but it rolled off him like water off a duck's back. Very well, said Anko, baring her teeth. The second part of the exam begins. The gates in front of the genin opened as she raised her hand. Now. The hand fell, and the examinees charged in. Several events happened over the next 45 minutes. For one, Anko finished briefing with the higher-ups and returned to the station to order the proctors to their post. She arrived to chaos. Mitarashi. Yelled at Chunin as she approached. There's been sabotage in the exams, we just found Sato tied up and unconscious behind the bushes. Anko jumped over to the undergrowth. The captured Chunin was still lying on his side, drooling onto the ground. His chakras drained and all his tenketsu are closed. Reported another subordinate. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was a leaf ninja pair who attacked him. Do you think? His report was cut off from the sound of sniggering from up ahead. Another Sato came into view, his clothes a little roughed up from where he dived aside to avoid Anko's kunai. The impostor smiled and winked. Then he vanished in a cloud of smoke. Anko cursed. And then she turned and ran full speed to make it to the tower. In another part of the forest, Gaara grew increasingly frustrated as he tried to track down enemy ninja with his useless team. For all of his strengths, he was not a censor, and neither were his brother and sister. When he finally found a trio of leaf genin with a puppy, he didn't even check for their scroll before burying them in a wave of sand and crushing them mercilessly. He was rewarded not with blood, but the sound of 4 pops. His sand drew back to display nothing but clear air instead of mangled corpses. Gaara grit his teeth and leapt deeper into the forest. He would feed his mother with even more blood to pay for the trickery. On another occasion, an enemy of the Leaf Village licked his lips as he stalked his prey through the forest. His senses might be slightly dulled by the foreign skin he was wearing over his true form, but he was more than experienced enough to hunt his target still. Deciding to drop in with a bit of a blast, he sent a large gust of wind directly at the 3 genin sitting on the ground. All 3 were blown back by the force of his attack. And then all 3 vanished in a puff of smoke. Orochimaru recognized the technique immediately and screamed in anger. Then he took off with his teammates, intent on killing at 1 genin before he marked the Uchiha. While everything went down in the training ground, a group of 10 Chunin proctors leapt down from the trees and gathered in front of the tower at the center of the forest. Then they released their transformation technique and laughed as they piled into the building. Wordlessly, all of them read the puzzle and released the scrolls together. Iruka, Izumo and Katetsu appeared in a puff of smoke and gaped at their location and the ninja in front of them. "What the fuck?" said Izumo, and Iruka himself was too stunned to chastise him. The genin laughed harder. "Well," Naruto said, a peculiar smile on his face. "It wasn't a very difficult test." Iruka had years of experience dealing with that smile. "Naruto," he sighed, resisting the urge to summon himself back to the Leaf Village and get a stiff drink. "What did you do?" "Destroy the competition, get the scroll, haul ass here." "Naruto, I'm warning you." "Troublesome," said Shikamaru, even though he was also smiling. "I want to sleep, so I'll get it out of the way." Ino hit the proctor with her clan technique, walked him into the forest. Hinata and Shino took him out. The Hyuga in question went a little pink but didn't protest her innocence. Shino's bugs lifted the scroll when Naruto created a distraction. Test began, he made transformed shadow clones of all us while we transformed into the other proctors and made a straight shot to the tower. "Test over, now can I go home?" The 3 Chunins felt their jaws drop. You're the Nara kid, right?" "To think Shikaku's boy could come up with such a plan," said Izumo weakly. "Me?" Shikamaru nudged his head in the direction of Team 7. The proctor of the first phase taught Naruto that it's okay for ninjas to cheat. The Chunin quickly digested this information and made the appropriate connection. Then they paled and swallowed emphatically. "I'm not telling the Hokage," muttered Katetsu. "I call Nada too," Izumo said quickly. Iruka cursed silently. Looking at the expectant faces of the genin, he reached up and massaged the bridge of his nose to try and forestall the blooming headache. "Fine. All 3 teams pass." Ignoring the cheers that broke out, even though a part of him was delighted to see Naruto receive the lion's share of it, he turned to the other 2. "Explain the rest of it to them." "I'm going to go see Lord Third." "Right," said Izumo, before his face turned contemplative. To think 9 Leaf rookies could beat even Itachi's old record. Sasuke, who was close enough to hear this, suddenly rediscovered an old expression. It was smiling. He hurriedly looked away and bumped fists with a grinning Naruto instead. "Hey," said Ino suddenly, a look of rising horror on her face. "Does this mean Naruto is a genius?" Chapter 2. 5 days after their unprecedented second phase finish, the rookie genin stood on the balcony, fresh and well rested, watching the fights taking place in the hall below. Sakura was recounting their triumph in detail to Kakashi, who'd ambled in the morning of the 5th day. "Hey, Naruto," said Sasuke, who'd absolutely dismantled a sound genin ride at the beginning and spent the next couple of fights basking in the glory. He nudged the blonde who was looking eagerly down at the fight currently in progress. Despite his best efforts to train in isolation, the Uchiha had ended up spending the majority of his time hanging out with his team. The forced closeness had, surprisingly, been much more comfortable than the Uchiha had been expecting. He'd, in fact, developed a strange rhythm with Naruto, one that had been blooming since their first C-rank mission. It was like the 2 of them were in sync no matter what they were doing, from sparring together to standing on the roof and watching Chunin hopefuls ambush each other around the tower. "I want your opinion on something." "What's that, bastard?" muttered Naruto, watching wide-eyed as Shino blasted apart another sound genin's arms. "Man, who knew Shino could be so ruthless?" "It is a little excessive," agreed Sasuke, the boy who'd witnessed his entire family get slaughtered and taken a solemn vow to kill his own elder brother. The fact that he'd beaten his brother's own record, however, seemed to have done wonders for the reticent boy. "Say, Naruto, imagine you wanted some ramen one night." That got Naruto's attention. "Imagine." Naruto snorted. "It's been a week since I ate any ramen, Sasuke. I could eat some right now if we didn't have to do these stupid preliminaries." Sasuke smirked. Without the Uzumaki's trickery, they might not have needed to have the preliminaries at all. 9 out of the 20 genin participating were here and unharmed only because of Naruto's pranking experience. It was good to see his rival coming up in the world. "Work with me here," said Sasuke. "You really love that stuff, right? So here's the scenario: you go one night to get your ramen. When you arrive at Ichiraku, you find that Iruka's ruined the entire place and destroyed all the ramen in the continent." Even Sasuke had noticed their Chunin teacher's uncommon affection for Naruto. "What?" roared Naruto, turning several heads in their direction. He blushed and then switched his voice to a whisper. "You bastard, what the hell are you talking about? Iruka-sensei would never do that. This is a stupid scenario. Just listen to it, it's a hypothetical situation." Snapped Sasuke, his patience fraying a little. Taking a deep breath, he looked at Naruto and rolled his eyes. Hypothetical means it's make-believe. Think of it like one of Kakashi's mission training exercises. This is one fucked up exercise, you asshole, muttered Naruto, still wide-eyed at the thought of his most precious person destroying his most precious thing. Where are you going with this? So Iruka has destroyed the one thing you love more than anything else. He's also said that you won't ever be able to eat ramen ever again. Naruto's eyes went wide. Ichiraku ramen, instant ramen, he's destroyed it all. If you try to make some yourself, he's going to come blow it up. If you get Ichiraku to make some, he's going to kill old man Ichiraku. The only way to eat ramen again is to beat Iruka in a fight. But here's the kicker, he says the only way you can beat him is to live a miserable existence without ramen, and the only way you can get the strength to best him is if you only ate vegetables for every meal. No ramen, ever again. What would you do in such a situation? What a terrible scenario, mumbled Naruto, his eyes wide and unseeing. Do you think this could happen? Did you hear something while the exams were happening? Iruka did look a little pissed that we cheated on the test. Sasuke sighed and pinched his nose. It's make-believe, idiot. Never mind, I can't believe I took 5 days to build up to this. I thought you'd really changed, but you're still the same bonehead as ever. No, just give me a moment, protested Naruto, still trying to process the idea of a world without ramen. He was so shaken up that he barely noticed Kankuro crush some ninja's limbs with his puppet. Why would Iruka-sensei do this, even in this scenario? Did the Hokage tell him to do it because he was mad at me? Did I pull a bad prank or something? Sasuke paused. That wasn't a bad question, even though it was still annoying. No, he said flatly. Why would the Hokage tell him to do it? Ramen's great, the Hokage loves ramen. The Leaf Village loves ramen. It keeps the citizens in line and is a very strong part of the village, it's almost the foundation of the damn place. Sasuke stopped himself when he realized he'd given away a little more than he wanted to. The Hokage would never order such a thing. That's a ridiculous idea and irrelevant to the story. Just say Iruka went mad with power and destroyed everything you love. Hey, Sasuke, make sure you watch me fight, offered Sakura as she walked past them and down the stairs. I'm going to beat Ino's ass and then we'll progress to the finals together. Sasuke grunted in reply, which made Sakura blush for some reason he didn't want to figure out. The pink-haired genin didn't even bother to ask Naruto the same, and besides, the blonde was still leaning against the railing, staring unseeingly into the distance. Naruto turned to him, and Sasuke saw a shadow of the same despair that had clung to him for years now. No ramen. He whispered. No, replied Sasuke. And I can't get any more. Nope. And the only way to beat Iruka-sensei and get ramen back is to not eat it again until I defeat him. Yes. And Iruka's super powerful in this scenario. Naruto, who doubtfully opened his mouth, closed it again. He's got a super secret power that even a jounin like Kakashi couldn't beat. It's so powerful that there's not a single bit of ramen left in the nations. Wow, mumbled Naruto. He blinked rapidly a few times before continuing. A world without ramen, huh? A world that's full of loneliness and those stares at me all the time. Yes, nodded Sasuke. Wait, what? He asked, startled, once he realized exactly what his teammate had said. No ramen, mumbled Naruto. No Grandpa Tucci or Aim, no Grandpa Hokage, no Iruka-sensei, no Team 7, just loneliness. No warmth. Naruto, asked Sasuke slowly. What exactly does ramen mean to you? Beneath them, Sakura and Ino were having some sort of discussion, but the two boys were too deep in their conversation to care. Naruto turned his blue eyes to Sasuke, who had to resist the urge to step back. The normally sparkling blue shade was now dull and lifeless. Hey, Sasuke, whispered the Uzumaki. You ever been hungry? So hungry that your stomach hurts all the time, but you have nothing to fill it with. You walk through the street and see all the shops, smell all the food, but you can't touch, you can't taste. Nobody offers you any food even though they can hear your stomach cry with the pain. Sasuke felt frozen, unable to move. He'd known that Naruto was an orphan who had nobody to care for him, but he could never have imagined that the little blonde had such depths to him. And then when you're cold, tired, and starving, you hear a voice. Someone offers you food for free. It's hot, it's warm and it fills your belly up, but you see the kind hands that give you the bowl. You see a hand reaching out to you. When you drink the broth, you feel the warmth of that bond. The next time you have money given to you by a precious person, you buy cups so you can feel a little bit of that warmth when you're on your own. Sasuke looked underneath. That hunger, it isn't just for food, is it? It's the hunger for. Sasuke clenched his fist. How many times, when he was younger, had he cried and shaken himself to sleep, aching to feel all the bonds he'd lost just one more time? How many times had he come face to face with his own loneliness, knowing that there was always a shadow lurking in his future that would keep him from making more? He had sat on his couch on many sleepless nights, painstakingly learning how to sew with bloodied hands so that he could attach the Uchiha fan onto his clothes. just to carry the weight of everything that had been taken for him. Heh, chuckled Naruto without any real humor. You don't need to say it. You get it. I know you would. And that's why, Naruto gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Even if the fourth himself came back from the grave and ordered me to stop, I wouldn't. That raiment connects me to my precious people, it gives me the warmth of my bonds. Naruto's eyes turned fierce, almost angry. I would never give up on Raymond. To me, no matter who stops me, it makes me who I am. If someone destroyed all of it, I would make my own, and I would share it again with my precious people. Even if I was weak, the lowest of the low, I would do it in secret to preserve those bonds. I would get stronger until I found the strength to protect it. I wouldn't ever stop. And if someone came to take it away again, I would defend it with my last breath. Wow, Naruto, you really love Raymond, don't you? Asked Kakashi, both a little surprised and exasperated. He'd been happy to have Sasuke engage Naruto in what looked like serious conversation, but they were both ignoring their teammate fighting her rival down below. The Jonin had edged over to see what the two were talking about and he was confused to say the least. The two boys were having a heart-to-heart about Raymond. Sasuke had gone white, his breathing coming harsher and harsher. With great difficulty, he controlled himself and sneered at his teacher. TCH, Kakashi. You know nothing. Yes, but the two of you should really be focusing on Sakura. Sakura and Ino, who'd been standing frozen for the last half a minute, suddenly proceeded to knock each other out with simultaneous punches. Kakashi sighed. Never mind, you two, he said, trotting down the stairs to recover his downed genin. Remember to always support your team, though. I can't help but say I'm a little disappointed. Naruto looked stricken at missing his crush's match, but Sasuke was unfazed. Don't let the scarecrow get to you. But you didn't answer my last question, Naruto. How would you make sure to protect your Raymond from Iruka? That's the thing, Sasuke, said Naruto. Your scenario can be scary, but I know it'll never happen. Iruka-sensei could never hurt the Raymond to begin with, not even if the Hokage ordered him to. What if Raymond wasn't precious to him to begin with? What if something happened to make him hated? Naruto smiled. It wasn't flashy or vibrant like his usual smiles. His face was somber and he suddenly looked much older and wiser than he ever had. You're mistaken, Sasuke. It isn't the Raymond that's really precious to Iruka-sensei. It's me. Sasuke's heart pounded. He had no answer to that. Hadn't he thought the same, once upon a time, before Itachi had come and ruined everything Sasuke Uchiha was? He wanted to yell at Naruto, scream at him that he was a fool, that he thought for a moment that they'd finally understood each other, before the blonde had gone and ruined it with his naive, stupid, weak optimism. But looking at Naruto's solemn smile, he found that he just couldn't. Don't worry, Sasuke, said Naruto, kicking him lightly in the shins and looking away when the Uchiha didn't speak. You're one of my precious people too. I will always share that warmth with you, believe it. Even though you're a bastard, he added with a mischievous grin. Their usual routine allowed Sasuke to marshal his emotions a little. You cheesy fool, he said, punching Naruto casually in the shoulder. Keep your weird feelings away from me. Hey, they're not weird. The two of them fell back into their usual bickering, but Sasuke's thoughts were still spinning inside his head. Hell yeah. It's my turn to rock. Yelled Naruto as his and Kiba's name came up on the board. Let's get wild. Kiba leapt off the balcony straight into the arena, placing Akamaru carefully to his side. Naruto, who'd paused to bump fists with Sasuke and a newly revived and rather downcast Sakura, paused. Hey, wait. Kiba's allowed to fight with his partner. I thought this was a one-on-one match, what gives? Sakura sighed, annoyed despite her own dejection. She and Sasuke had spent some time going over gamma plans and ideas with Naruto, trying their best to hammer some information into their dense treatment. They'd gone over the Inuzuka as well, but somehow she wasn't surprised that Naruto had forgotten. He might be tricky, but no one could deny that the blonde was an idiot. Dogs are the traditional fighting partners of the Inuzuka clan. For this reason, Kiba's partner will be allowed to participate in this round with him, explained the proctor, before she could. The man was looking a little annoyed, and even the Hokage was shaking his head at Naruto's lack of knowledge. Oh, I see, said Naruto, adopting that strange thinking posture with his chin testing on his fingers. Alright, Kaka-sensei, let's go. Asked the Jonin, nonchalant as ever. Oh, I see. I wanted to get some reading in, but I guess it'll have to wait. Sakura watched with an open mouth as student and teacher leapt over the railing and landed together on the ground floor. Shouts and protests went around the arena, some calling for instant disqualification. Hey, what's the big idea? Protested Kiba. Akamaru and a Jonin are hardly the same thing. I know you helped us with the second phase, Naruto, but I won't let you pull your tricks in our fight. It's part of the Uzumaki clan style, deadpan Naruto. We always fight as a teacher and student. Kiba turned as red as the tattoos on his face. Clan. There's no such thing as the Uzumaki clan, you buffoon. An awkward silence fell over the arena. Kurenai, who'd been about to join Kiba down in the arena to protest this farce, also stopped and coughed in embarrassment. Is this what the ninjas of the Leaf are taught nowadays? Asked a Sand Jonin, smirking. Have their greatest allies been wiped from the history of the Leaf? How shameful. Hey, who the hell are you calling shameful, you foreign? Ahem. The Hokage cleared his throat and everyone fell silent again. Genin and Yuzuka. You should know better than to speak in such a manner to a superior, foreigner or not. Kiba bowed his head in chastisement. You will have to forgive my Genin, Baki. Not all students are gifted equally when it comes to academics. Baki humphed. But to forget the Leaf's oldest ally is a clan so dangerous that it took 3 nations to wipe them out. Has your Genin never noticed the patch your ninja wear on their shoulders? Wait, there really is an Uzumaki clan? Asked Naruto. The lesson for another time, said the Hokage breezily, as mouths hung open in disbelief around the room. And while some clans indeed follow this tradition, Naruto, I don't recall this being an Uzumaki tradition. Kakashi raised his hand. All heads turned to him. But my lord, as the sole Uzumaki in the Leaf Village, Naruto does have the right to institute his own traditions, right? The crowd looked at the Hokage, waiting for his answer. Hiruzen chuckled. That is indeed correct, Kakashi, but Naruto has neither filled the paperwork to register as a clan, nor has he registered its abilities with Ninja Central. I'm sure we can go over the paperwork once the preliminaries end, but for now, I'm afraid you will have to let your student fight alone. I'm sure a ninja of Naruto's caliber will make up the deficit with little issue. Naruto puffed his chest out at the praise, though he still looked a little taken aback by the fact that the Uzumaki really were a clan. Kakashi shrugged. Well, kid, I tried, he said, ruffling his head. With a puff of smoke, he vanished and reappeared on the balcony, winking happily at his genin. Do your best. I will, my cute little sensei. Naruto smiled, looking undisturbed that his ridiculous plan had failed. Kurenai twitched a little. All the jonin on the balcony tensed, looking at Kakashi out of the corner of their eyes. They seemed to be thinking deeply for a moment before they relaxed. Kurenai didn't. Are both parties ready to finally begin the match? Hade asked, looking more than a little annoyed. Uzumaki, the dog stays. And Yuzuka, you ready? Born ready. Shot back Kiba, getting some of his fire back. The proctor called the beginning of the match and leapt away. No more tricks, you bastard. It's just you and me in the pit now, and I'm going to take you down. Without waiting for his own dog, Kiba charged. Naruto slipped to the side almost casually, before bringing his fists up. That was your one shot to get me, Kiba, said Naruto, still serene. You want to try and take mine, now? Kiba grinned. Don't get cocky, dead last. There's no trickery to hide behind now, don't pretend you've improved so much since the academy. Even then, your punches were just like flies, and your ninjutsu worse than a kid's. Oh, wanna bet? Kiba narrowed his eyes, before relaxing. Smirking, he unzipped his jacket and threw it away, and then crossed his arms and grinned at the blonde. Bring it, Naruto. But if you fail to take me out, you have to forfeit the match right then, alright. Fine by me, replied Naruto idly. And then he leapt onto the wall of the arena and began going through hand seals. Sakura watched in disbelief as Kiba blindly charged Naruto and then stood his ground, allowed him to take one free shot. Kakashi-sensei, what the hell is the idiot doing? He'll lose the match if he keeps this up. She looked anxiously at her Jonin-sensei, who just chuckled. Don't worry, Sakura, I have a feeling things are going to take a shocking turn. Naruto landed on the wall and began to go through a rapid set of seals. Everyone on the gallery leaned forward to watch. Yeah, he'll be fine, said Sasuke, his lips curling in amusement. I can't believe he'd reach this level just to try and pass, though. Heh. So that's your plan. Before Sakura could speak, she felt a rush of wind blow past her. The next thing she knew, teammates Jonin-sensei was standing on the wall behind Naruto, pulling one of his hands tightly behind his back and holding a kunai at his throat. Hey, what gives? Protested Naruto, struggling against her. I think you'd stoop this low to get your student to pass. But even as a rookie Jonin, I do know how to see, how do you always say it, underneath the underneath. I might be a rookie Jonin, but I won't fall for your deception. Kurenai reversed her grip on the kunai and brought it down on Naruto's head. Kakashi. Naruto fell onto the floor roughly, knocked out instantly. Kurenai froze, her red eyes almost bulging out of their sockets. What? She asked, her voice cracking with shock. But was he the hand seals? The proctor leapt down. This match is over. Kiba Inuzuka is disqualified by interference. Naruto Uzumaki proceeds to the next round. What the fuck? Roared Kiba. Kurenai-sensei, why would you even do that? No, there must be some mistake, the Jonin muttered. She landed lightly next to Naruto and pulsed her chakra. For a moment, nothing happened. After a second or so, nothing continued to happen. But Kurenai swallowed thickly. She whipped her head around to see Kakashi coming up to pick up Naruto. You're you? He's not you. Ah, the passions of a rookie jonin, Kakashi smiled, leaning over to check on his student. The blonde was amazingly coming around already, slowly stirring. Your concern for your student is admirable. Kurenai's face was set in a rictus horror and shame. Will someone please explain what the hell just happened? Roared Kiba. Their cute little teacher, Kurenai flinched but remained silent, thought that my cute little student was actually me. What? Why? He smells just like Naruto, protested Kiba. Why would Kurenai-sensei think the idiot was you? I was totally going to win this. His deliberate little gaffe when I flickered to the balcony. The way he dodged your attack smoothly, though I'm happy to say that's the result of my own superior training. The hand seals for the jutsu he was pretending to do, even though he doesn't know a single elemental technique. Kakashi tapped his chin thoughtfully as Naruto slowly sat up and groaned next to him. Take your pick. Kurenai puffed up indignantly. Don't pretend that you and your little Ichihead didn't play along once you caught on. Your little shocking comment, she said, through gritted teeth. It's a rather common turn of phrase, isn't it? Replied Kakashi calmly. Really, sometimes there is no underneath the underneath. Or perhaps, he said, putting an arm around Naruto who was grinning weakly, there's an underneath the underneath the underneath. Kurenai turned her head away and pulled a protesting Kiba up to the stands, steadfastly turning a blind eye to the mocking looks she was receiving. Naruto, said Kakashi, looking proudly down at his smallest genin, as the crowd tried to decide whether to boo or applaud. The Hokage was rubbing his forehead while trying to hide a small smirk under his hat. Sakura and Ino are right. You might really be a genius after all. Chapter 3. The Hokage breathed a long plume of smoke out of the corner of his mouth, eyeing the ninja gathered before him. The relaxed atmosphere around the room belied the fact that every person standing within its walls was a stone-cold contract killer. The finals are in 1 week, rumbled the Hokage. The corpses in the forest turned up only dead ends, but we have every reason to suspect that Orochimaru is still in the area. Jiraiya of the Sannin has been dispatched to all the districts around the village, and Anbu patrols outside have also tripled. If Orochimaru is planning something, we can be rest assured that it will happen on the date of the final. All of you are hereby ordered to remain vigilant. Your students will be your responsibility on that day. Lord Hokage, boomed Guy, is it wise to have the finals in such a scenario? Perhaps we should hold off on the event until investigations turn up something concrete. As much as I would like that, Guy, I'm afraid it is not a possibility, answered the Hokage. Tickets have been sold at a premium, the daimyo has already set out, and the Leaf cannot afford to back out at the last moment and show any hint of weakness. Guy nodded his acceptance. Want a little more time for the finals, Guy? Asuma chuckled, puffing on a cigarette near the window. Don't tell me you're afraid of losing your little bet with Kakashi. You have doubled the stakes, after all. I, exuberant as ever, hardly crossed his hands in front of his body in denial. Never. Even though Niji has denied my assistance to train for the final, I'm sure the strength of his youthfulness will take him to the very top. Soon we shall see an unmasked copy ninja walking around the village with empty hands, this I swear. All eyes turned to Kakashi, but the lanky jonin was immersed in the orange book he was holding. He looked up slowly. He asked, making the others in the room groan immediately. Did I miss something? The Hokage raised his hands to forestall the imminent explosion as Guy swelled up like one of Jiraiya's toads. Enough. Kakashi, pay attention, Hiruzen admonished. Kakashi shrugged his shoulders, not taking his attention off his reading. The Hokage let it slide. Report on the progress of your students, now, before you're dismissed. Have they taken the message of the second phase to heart? Asuma spoke up immediately, evidently eager to broach this topic. The little Nara picked up on it immediately. The first thing he asked me was if their activities over this month would be tracked and counted towards his final promotion as Chunin. I didn't confirm or deny, of course, but the little genius has been training with his father every day for the last 3 weeks. His stamina and hand-to-hand has improved, his tactics were already Jonin level. He's the full deal, Hokage-sama. He's ready for a promotion, then. What of his opponent, Dosu of Sound? Shikamaru's got a flair for the dramatic, replied Asuma. He hasn't let me in on his plan, but he's told me that he's got 36 different scenarios planned out. If he manages to stay in his matches long enough to demonstrate his talents, he's a sure bet for promotion. As impressive as his father, said the Hokage. Very good. Guy. As I said, Lord Hokage, said Guy. Niji has not come to me for training. Both his heaven and his earth are ideal for a genin on the cusp of promotion, but his personal issues are affecting his teamwork. He will progress far on the day, but, Guy sighed, his earnest face falling, I do not think he is ready to be promoted, based on what I have seen. He is a great soldier, but he is not yet a leader of men. Not every Chunin is a born leader, chided Hiruzen. Leadership is important, yes, but every ninja in the village is professional enough to put the mission first, no matter how difficult their leader might prove, as long as said leader is tactically sound and does not ask the unfair of his teammates. I shook his head. There is a reason they are apprenticed to us, are they not? They will be the future elites of the village, Lord Hokage. Someday they will have genin students of their own. If Neji is passed on the merit of his skill alone, he will never be great. It will be a waste of his youth. There are plenty of good jonin in the village, protested Kurenai. Hiruzen noted the deliberate distance she'd put between herself and his son. All of them are a credit to the system and indispensable to the functioning of Fire Nation. Neji might yet thaw his disposition and bond with his peers before he advances further, but a genius like him will surely resent being held back, sooner or later. Neji's hurts run deep, said Guy. You are, of course, correct, but I believe that we must hold our students to a higher standard. Until Neji faces his past and comes to terms with it, I myself will block his promotion to Chunin. He bowed his head. Lord Hokage. At ease, Guy. All of you know your students best, said Hiruzen. I only ask for your reports, and yours will be the final word when it comes to their progress. Very well, Guy. It heartens me to see that you are dedicated to growing 3 ninjas as compassionate and well-rounded as you. The eccentric Jonin flashed a smile, throwing a thumbs up. The Hokage snorted. Kurenai? He asked, turning his attention to the only female in the room. Shino has been training hard over the last few weeks, Lord Third, said Kurenai. Like Sarutobi, she continued, deliberately formal, I am not too aware of the details of his training with his clan, only that he has been working from sunup to sundown, unless he's been reviewing with me. While he has trouble with his emotions sometimes, I believe that he has been enthused by the second phase. But he is also disturbed, she said, at what he perceives as dishonor to both his teammate and his teacher. Depending on who wins the first fight, he says that he will settle the matter on the ground once he defeats Kankuro of the Sand. And does his teacher feel dishonored? Asked Kakashi lightly. Kurenai shook her head, the dark locks around her face swaying hypnotically. Hiruzen blinked and then blinked again. I am a teacher, as much as I am a ninja of this village. While I admit that I behaved a little more rashly than I should have, I have grown attached to my team and thought that the threat to them was real. Besides, she said, her red eyes glinting, as someone who specializes in deception of the mind, I can appreciate a trick well done. I hold no hostility to little Uzumaki, and I only hope that he enriches his talents in service of the village. If you want, I can offer him some tips in the mind arts to show both him and my team that there is no animosity between us, she offered. That's good, said Kakashi, your offer. But also, he clarified, that you care so much for your students. In that aspect, Kurenai, you are perhaps ahead of all us, on par with Guy. If teammate ever needs to learn some ninjutsu, I will help where I can. I appreciate that we settled this. How youthful. Boomed Guy. It warms my heart to see such understanding between comrades. The Hokage also nodded his head in approval. The village will grow with such wisdom leading it forward, he remarked. Kurenai's cheeks pinked gently and her eyes shone, glowing like rubies in the dark. The Hokage blinked again. His son was either a fool or a hero. And on the matter of his promotion? He asked. I am not sure, Lord Third, she answered simply. I believe that, unlike most Abiram, Shino's difficulties do not lie in a lack of emotion. Instead, he is unusually sensitive for a boy his age, with hidden depths. For him, it is expressing those emotions that is the problem. I fear that they might come out expressively one day. For that reason, I have not talked to him about the prelims and let him deal with his feelings himself. His final promotion will be based on how he performs in his match, if I have calculated correctly. Excellent, the Hokage complimented her. A level of insight befitting of a Jinjutsu expert, Jonin. Very well, I shall keep a close eye on him next week, he said. Now, to the final 2 rookies. Kakashi, Ibisu. The special Jonin melted out of the shadows, bowing his head at Kakashi, indicating that the Jonin should speak first. Ibisu was a man of tradition. Despite his rank, it was with Chunin that he interacted, more than the Jonin of the village. For all of his talents, the man still deferred to his seniors steadfastly, to the point where his respect for them would not allow him to even speak between a conversation, unless it were for a mission. He was a rigid man. Kakashi accepted the invitation with his usual ill grace. I am sure you remember our last discussions about Sasuke, Lord Third, he said, continuing when the Hokage nodded. I am pleased to say that Sasuke has progressed even beyond my expectations. To those who knew him, the copy ninja's posture seemed to radiate pride and satisfaction. His skills are not in question, and I have only augmented them over the past few weeks. Suffice to say, his lone eye roamed around the room. He can win the entire event should the stars align in his favor. The Hokage cut off Guy before he could begin to reply to that. A strong statement, my boy. But that is not what you are speaking of, unless I am mistaken. Perceptive as ever, Lord Hokage, Kakashi nodded. Ever since the wave disaster, Hiruzen snorted, Team 7 has been coming together into a cohesive unit. While Naruto has always made overtures towards his teammates in sometimes unusual fashion, it is only recently that Sasuke has become receptive and even reciprocated. I believe that the two of them already had some sort of rivalry even before the team had formed, but Naruto's solution to the second phase, as well as his preliminary fight, he nodded at Kurenai, has opened his eyes to Naruto as a true peer. Both times, Naruto was clean, clever and decisive, traits I believe Sasuke can respect. I've even seen the boys bonding over their likes, but most importantly, when I offered him my teaching over this month, his first response was hesitation. "The Uchiha balked at the idea of training with you?" asked Asuma, surprised. All the higher-ups in the village knew of the boy's self-proclaimed ambition and how driven he was to achieve it. "Not at the idea of training with me," answered Kakashi. "The idea of me training with me, without his teammate. After all, I am the only Jonin who has 2 students in the final, so it was inevitable that I would need some support." The Hokage leaned back in his seat, amused at the sour looks the other Jonin tried to hide, but also pleased at this new development. How was the matter settled? Kakashi shook his head, his lone eye curving in a cyclopean smile. Naruto settled the matter for him. Despite their newborn camaraderie, both boys are aware of the danger Sasuke's opponent poses. After I assured the boys that I'd gotten the ideal instructor for him, Sasuke consented to make the trip with me, as long as he, in his own words, got to fight the dead last in the semifinals. The boy is that confident in his rival's abilities? Questioned Guy, rubbing his chin. The only way that they will meet is if Uzumaki beats my student. I do not mean to brag, but that will be a tall order. Kakashi nodded. As I said, a new respect has bloomed between them. Right now, Naruto is Sasuke's first and only bond that is tying him to the Leaf Village firmly. Where tens of teachers and classmates have failed, Naruto, against all odds, has succeeded. I won't say that Sasuke has given up on his revenge, but he has been more contemplative over the last month than I've ever seen him. An immediate goal, separate from his desire to hunt down his brother, has been good for him. Do you think the bond will hold? Asked Kurenai, taking the words out of the Hokage's mouth. Hypothetically, if Uzumaki pulls out another shock victory, how will he take it? Kakashi sighed. And that is why I don't know if Sasuke is ready to be a Chunin, Lord Hokage, he said. Like the Abiram, he can only be judged after the fact. All I know is that he has been sneaking out during the evening sometimes to spar with his teammate and even to dine with Naruto and Sakura a couple times. Kakashi chuckled. I'm not sure of the specifics, but I think Naruto has converted the boy to the ways of Ramen. I hear him muttering about it now and then. They are building their bonds and possibly exchanging lessons as well. A week in, I caught Sasuke trying to walk on water, a skill I hadn't taught him then, but one I believe Ibisu has been working on, with Naruto. The special Jonin nodded. He has not bonded with Sakura to the same extent, but Naruto's crush ensures that they include her often, something I myself deemed unimportant at this juncture. That is excellent news, Kakashi. Perhaps there is hope for young Sasuke's future after all, said Hiruzen. Very well. I will observe the boy myself and ask you to do the same. Perhaps he shall be a good fit with the Hunter Nin, if your observations are correct. A series of short-term objectives that will both take his attention and also help him grow strong enough to fulfill his ambitions. Kakashi nodded in agreement. Very well, said the Hokage, pulling deeply on his pipe. And now, on to our most enigmatic participant. What are your thoughts on Naruto, Ibisu? Lord Hokage, Ibisu bent his head in submission. Uzumaki is dense, poor at abstract thinking, and he has no scholastic skills to speak of. He takes some things far too literally and disregards others. He can be loud and obnoxiously naive, his dietary habits are abysmal, and his manners are worse than a feral animal. He raised his head, his face shining. That being said, Lord Hokage, the boy is beyond ready to be a Chunin. If you are willing to take personal recommendations into account, that boy should be drafted into Anbu post-haste. He will be a captain before he reaches adulthood. Hiruzen played with the idea of Ibisu being one of the ninjas conspiring to send the demon fox to his death and discarded it. He recognized the look on his face. It was one he had worn himself many times when speaking of his old and misguided student. Those are some contrasting statements, Ibisu, said Kakashi, a raised eyebrow the only testament to his surprise. What makes you think that Naruto could qualify for Anbu with such a laundry list of defects? It's simple, replied the special Jonin. The boy is a diamond in the rough. Half of his faults are only because he is a 13-year-old boy, and the other half will be taken care of after a few missions with the Black Ops, as long as he has a proper safety net back home to allow him to deal with the fallout. Lord Third, he said, I will not mince words. The academy completely failed, perhaps deliberately, to understand the child. He is no intellectual, pouring through blocks of text for research. Perhaps that will come with age, but the boy is one who learns through fists and cuts and bruises, through word of mouth and instructions. The special Jonin placed a thick file on the Hokage's desk. Everyone came closer for a better view as Hiruzen opened it to find detailed reports and observations on Naruto. The Hokage couldn't hide his surprise as he flipped through the pages. Some of these are his own assignments, observed Kakashi, smoothly reading Naruto's surprisingly tidy scrawl upside down. Ibisu nodded. Like I said, the boy does not do well with books and tomes. However, if given relevant material, like packets on chakra control after his first evening of training, or even basic politics after a round of mock missions, he will diligently work his way through the information. After some prodding on my part, he has even learned to ask relevant questions. That is not to say that he is not curious, but he prefers to go to his teammate Haruno for any follow-up information that might interest him, and the girl does oblige him, if a little violently at times. In that way, Lord Hokage, Team 7 is perfectly balanced. The Hokage nodded, still working through the pages. Tactics, stratagems, logistics, even basic history and geography, and, the Hokage raised his eyebrows. Etiquette and comportment. How on earth did you manage to teach him all of this, Ibisu? If you will allow me a bit of hubris, Lord Hokage, said Ibisu, like the Jonin are elites in different areas of the martial, I am an elite in the field of education. They have developed unique skills in their fields of interest, and I have tailored my teaching abilities to teach every student, irrespective of their levels of abilities. Once you get a handle on Naruto's learning methods, his ability is unquestionable. Ebisu waved a loose arm at the papers on the Hokage's desk. Put him in as a squad member of an infiltration mission to Lightning Country, and he will learn, in bits and pieces, of the history, geography and politics. Tell him that he is on an undercover protection detail in the daimyo's court and he will display a stunning development in his etiquette. In the mock assassination mission, Asuma coughed a little, inhaling more smoke than he meant to. He learns to use his clones in tandem instead of all at once, and the results are interesting, he said, sweeping his hand at the file on the table. He was a bit resistant to the idea of fake missions at first, but once I framed it in terms he understood, he, in his own words, said that there is no shortcut to becoming Hokage and work diligently at the matter. I see, boomed Guy, shooting Ibisu a thumbs up. It is how you advised me to help Lee focus on matters other than his physical prowess, by framing the academic as training to overcome his rival. How youthful. Exactly, said Ibisu, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. The boy has progressed in his weakest area more than even I could dream of. He has improved his chakra control, polished his hand-to-hand skills, and even improved his weaponry. He is still terrible at advanced mathematics, but displays an astonishing ability in the practical abilities, with an eye for advanced maneuvers with shuriken and kunai. Where he really shines, however, is his ninjutsu ability. I have not taught him more than a few, but he tweaks and modifies and experiments with them constantly, even working on hand seal theory with his female teammate. Hiruzen felt his own interest rise. He was called the professor for a reason, after all. Ninjutsu experimentation, you say? He asked. Have you seen any results? Ibisu smiled. It seems all of your subordinates have a touch of the drama, Lord Third. My student is also ready for the finals, and there is one thing he has done that none of his competitors have. He's not very subtle, sometimes, grumbled Kurenai. Subtle enough for a genin, chuckled Asuma. My little Nara, for all of his intelligence, still hasn't realized that he's being spied on. The Hyuga have come forward to me about his attempts, said Guy. Of course, none of them have intervened, since every prospective Chunin should always be wary of counterintelligence. His efforts seem to have not borne much fruit, but I have requested them to remain neutral, to allow Niji to learn his lesson and grow as a ninja. Ah, said the Hokage. He has been spying on the opposition. That, alone, puts him in the running for a promotion, then. Excellent, Ibisu. I look forward to seeing him in action next weekend. The daimyo is sure to be pleased with such a talented pool of genin. I, myself, am looking forward to a day off at the office and a chance to see the next generation of the Leaf. Actually, Lord Hokage, perhaps there is a way for you to get a sample of Naruto's talents before the exams begin, said Ibisu. Oh? Do tell. Ibisu fidgeted a little, but the man seemed to be giving off an air of smugness. If you will excuse a little misuse of your facilities, I pulled a few strings. Training Ground 83 was open tonight, and I and a few of my colleagues have set an actual mission for little Uzumaki to undertake. 83? Asked Kurenai, shocked. You want to put a rookie genin through the fortress? I thought you wanted to recommend him for Anbu, Ibisu, not put him through Anbu Wargams. The parameters have been altered, the trap difficulty lowered, and the guards are all from the Chunin pool, not from Anbu. I simply received permission to use it for an evening, said Ibisu. Since Naruto technically failed the information gathering portion of Phase 1, I wanted him to prove to me that he has improved under my teaching. He has been told that this is a real mission, with both money from my pocket and an advanced technique as a reward. I have officially put the mission difficulty as C rank, but still protested Asuma. Is it really any different from the clan's personal training areas? Asked Kakashi. The Hyuga Maze, the Yamanaka Twister, the Nara Gauntlet. Besides, unless I'm mistaken, Guy has also tapped the same ground to put his team through mock missions there. Indeed. answered the excitable Jonin. It is a most youthful method of training, one that should be commended, not criticized. I for one trust my dear Ibisu if he says mission parameters have been altered. Oh, if only I were a youthful genin again, trying to. Also, Kakashi cut in smoothly, I doubt that Naruto will be running it alone. Sasuke, for some reason, wanted an early end to his evening training even before I told him I wouldn't be available. I believe Naruto has contacted his teammates to run the mission with him, he concluded, pleased. I see, said Hiruzen slowly. But I'm afraid I don't see how we can review his performance from here, really. All the ninja in the room turned a deadpan expression on him. Hiruzen even imagined that he could feel the stony looks of the Anbu hiding in the corners of his office. Oh, I don't know, Lord Hokage, said Asuma acidly. Surely there isn't a convenient crystal ball that keeps track of our single biggest asset any moment he's within 5 kilometers of the village wall. The Hokage glared at his son. If such a device existed, it would be a secret, my foolish son. Asuma met his look with a face carved from stone. Hiruzen blew out another puff of smoke. Very well, he said. It seems that even the Hokage's office is cursed with loose lips. All the ninja around the room gathered eagerly around the sphere he took out from his drawer and placed on the table. The crystal remained blank for almost half a minute before it began to show images, hazy and distorted, in its depths. That's strange, muttered the Hokage, scratching his beard. Training ground 83 is close enough to establish a quicker connection. Lord Hokage, said Kakashi, that's not the fortress. And that's my team, said Kurenai, peering into the ball. And mine, said Asuma, snuffing his cigarette out with a burst of chakra. What the hell? For the last time, whispered Ino, looking at the compound in front of them. Are we sure about this mission? Naruto rubbed his temples. The blonde ninja was unrecognizable, dressed from head to toe in loose black clothing, a similar headband hiding his brightly colored hair. The only things visible were his electric blue eyes, and he pulled a pair of round black goggles over them. Yes, Ino, I'm sure, he said, his voice slightly muffled. The blonde handed a similarly dressed Shikamaru another pair, who pulled it over his face. Ibisu-sensei told me it was a real mission, but he was working with wrong intel. I've been, the blonde paused, collecting information of my own for the past few weeks, and my source is 100% guaranteed right. You have been trying to spy on your opponents before the finals, that much has been established, said Shino, a touch coldly. The tall boy buzzed a little, sounding displeased. Naruto turned to him. Well, duh, he said. I can't believe you guys haven't been doing the same. Besides, your place is harder to get into than the Hyuga's, buddy. Way too many insects, he said. Indeed, said Shino. His buzzing sounded a little happier. Screw that, said Ino. The Forest of Death was something else, this is literally a step away from being a suicide mission. You want us to infiltrate the fucking Sans lodgings to look for proof. You broke Sasuke. Sakura, who was hunched over next to a squatting Sasuke, looked up at that and scowled. I'm going to kick your ass once this mission is over, you idiot, she hissed, while running gentle circles over Sasuke's back. I can't believe you pretended to be Sasuke to seduce that sand harlot. Hey, Sasuke's fine with it, protested Naruto. Right, Sasuke. Sasuke turned white on seeing eyes at him. I can't believe you did this to me again. Never mind, said Naruto quickly, before Sakura could pick up on that line of questioning. Sasuke's got the easiest gig anyway, so he's going to be fine. Besides, he's got you as backup, Sakura. Sasuke's eyes flashed red for an instant. Bottom line, said Naruto, ignoring his hyperventilating best friend, Temari has fallen into an ill-timed romance with the last Uchiha, he sniggered. Since she knew of Sasuke so much, she has spilled her guts about the Sand and Sound's plan, and now we need to get in and find the details out. Yeah, but why not take it to the Hokage? Listen, if you're being chicken, I can, began Kiba, but Shikamaru cut him off. No. Kiba, you and Choji are the muscle for the operation. If things go south, the two of you are going to be our first and last line of defense while we try to escape. Sasuke's going to be otherwise occupied, and Naruto's the only one who's infiltrated it before, so he needs to be with me, said the Nara sternly. Besides, think about it. There's a reason Ibisu gave Naruto this mission. If Leaf Jonin or Anbu are found inside the compound, that's an international incident. If a few genin are found sneaking in, the higher-ups can just say that it was a stupid attempt to spy on the competition, and the most we get is a slap on the wrist. Or disqualification, which would honestly be nice, he muttered to himself. I'm just saying, Ino protested weakly, before steeling herself. Right, no, you're right. We can do this. Let's go over mission parameters one last time. Very well, said Shino, stepping forward. A dark line crawled out from his jacket and arranged itself into an outline of the compound at their feet. The mission objectives are, in essence, simple. He raised a finger. Information. He raised another. Sabotage. A third finger joined the other two. Distraction. The Aburam pointed to the U-shaped row of rectangles on the ground. The outline of the main building started moving around in a loop. The main building. Heavily guarded and patrolled. Luckily, Temari of the desert has told Naruto or Sasuke, from her perspective, an easy opening so that the two of them might have a romantic tryst. Sasuke whined. Sakura rubbed his back harder. In 10 minutes, the moon shall go behind the clouds. Sasuke will enter Temari's room through the rightmost window on the 3rd floor, while Sakura will hide underneath in the bushes to act as a distraction. At the same time, Shikamaru and Naruto will infiltrate the senior officer Baki's room. Temari has reported that he will be in town tonight, leaving her open to have her intimate meeting with Sasuke. Another whine. Both Ino and Sakura shot Sasuke concerned looks before glowering identically at Naruto. Ino will go here. Another house in the compound started moving in place to where Naruto has reported the armory is. There is only one guard to avoid extra suspicion, I believe. If she finds any sort of weapons, she is to either sabotage them to the best of her abilities. I have provided her with a special contingent of my parasites for the same purpose. The Yamanaka heiress nodded. Toji and Kiba are the backups, continued Shino, while the Inyazuka scowled. In case the mission is in jeopardy and help is needed, they will enter and assist as needed. And finally, Shino hummed in satisfaction, I am mission central. Each of you have received 3 different species of insects, one on each shoulder and the last in the small of your back. Remember, the one on the left is for immediate backup, the one on the right is to call Kiba or Choji, who shall be held in reserve for an escape, unless things are utterly dire. Finally, the one in the small of your back is for the distraction. Simply squeeze the insect and it will release a pheromone with a range of 1 kilometer. The one on the left will call the nearest team for help and the other 2 are self-explanatory. You will feel a bite, not unlike an inoculation, and then my peer will lead you to the person in distress. If the closest team is in trouble, then the distraction will auto-activate in 5 seconds unless the response team squeezes their insect in turn. I will be keeping track of all of you inside from here. However, there are still, some of the insects on the ground broke off and moved around the compound walls, ninja on patrol. Any movement you make will have to be calculated and careful. And remember, Ino, Naruto, no chakra, added Shikamaru darkly. Kiba's seals will hold, but some of us, he looked dryly at Naruto, looking like an overgrown insect himself with his goggles, have way too much and will break them under stress. Sand has some of the best sensors in the elemental nations. 1 drop of chakra and they will be on us like white on rice. We're going in on stealth alone. So no pressure, said Kiba, still a touch bitter at being relegated to the sidelines. He'd provided the gear from the hunter nin stores of his family, while Choji had brought an entire supply of different kinds of pills. No pressure at all, said Naruto. Listen, guys, he said seriously. This means everything to the village. The exams, the finals, the prelims, none of it matters if there isn't a village to return to. Stay close to the ground and the walls, move with the clouds, and call if you need help. Sasuke, he addressed the blonde, buddy, you got to think of the leaf and just go for it. I believe in you, he added, and the Uchiha nodded shakily, a little color returning to his cheeks. We're ninja of the Leaf Village, he whispered cheered, we got this. Bring it in. He put his fist out and the other genin circled around him and repeated the gesture. Sasuke met eyes with him and nodded firmly. For the leaf, whispered Naruto. The leaf, repeated the others. He's actually good at that, whispered Ino to Sakura as they huddled in the no man's land between the sand and leaf patrols. Why is he good at that? Sakura shrugged. It's Naruto. He incited an entire country to revolution, this is nothing. Ino wanted to ask, but then the clouds covered the moon and darkness swept over the grounds and there was no time at all. Like rats in the dark, the genin scrambled straight for the walls of the compound. Shikamaru stood against the wall and Naruto boosted himself onto the top before twisting smoothly and pulling Shikamaru up. The 2 of them landed lightly on the other side and immediately ducked into the bushes, silent and focused. Even without using chakra to stick to things, they were still trained ninjas by description. Shikamaru held his breath as he heard the patter of feet pass overhead, his heart beating so loudly that he was sure the patrol would hear it. He grit his teeth as the footsteps faded and without speaking, both him and his partner lifted from the grass and half ran, half crawled through the undergrowth. He counted silently inside his head as they moved forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. 7 seconds. There was a patch of light in front of them, illuminated by a lone window on the ground floor. Shikamaru's brain sped through the mathematics, calculating the time till the next patrolling ninja would come around, their speed of travel, the distance between them and the patch of grass beyond the window, the chances of someone appearing at it while they passed. The muscles of his legs tensed and then Naruto dragged him harshly down into the grass. Shikamaru heard the sound of another patrol come and go, the blood thundering in his ears. He had just miscalculated and only Naruto's quick thinking had saved them for discovery. His brain now rushed through the different scenarios that could happen if they got caught after all, he told Ino a barefaced lie. There was as much chance of death and dismemberment on discovery as there was of a trip to the Hokage and disqualification for resorting to unfair means. Shikamaru weakly tried to get up, his arms feeling weak, but Naruto's fist held him firm against the ground. The blonde slowly tapped on his chest. And again and again. The Nara boy tried to match his heartbeat to the sound of Naruto's taps as he heard another patrol come and go, and then another, wondering just how Naruto had gotten enough experience to be a stone-cold infiltrator. After a while, his breathing turned even and he squeezed his fist over Naruto's to signal that he was fine. Naruto squeezed back. As soon as the next patrols passed, they moved forward again, and this time, Shikamaru felt his mind fall into its familiar calm rhythms. He was a Nara. The shadows were his fiefdom. He would be fine. Like spirits in the night, the two of them crept along to the edge of the main building. It was a giant wooden building made in the traditional Fire Country style, with multiple stories stacked on top of each other, and 3 giant roofs, from big to small, and balconies encircling each floor. Shikamaru lay against the side and listened to the sound of crickets chirping and the birds calling to each other occasionally, interrupted by the light footsteps of the ninja patrolling the walls. A summer swallow burbled from the other side of the compound and an owl hooted in response. Shikamaru swallowed, his throat dry. The other 3 were also in position. Naruto shifted against him. Quietly, the blonde crouched to his knees like he was one of Shikamaru's own shadows and chanced a quick peek inside the ground floor before collapsing bonelessly to the ground again. He felt the Uzumaki curl up next to him, his muffled breath still hot against his ears. Nightingale floors, Naruto hissed into his ears and Shikamaru nodded his head. It was an old defense against ninjas, dating back to the warring periods, when clans would leave the nails on their floorboards purposely loose so that any intruder would be caught immediately because they didn't know where to step. No matter. He adapted their plans accordingly. The two of them huddled together on the ground and Shikamaru calmed himself by watching the clouds pass, a small touch of normalcy in the middle of a crazy mission. The moon vanished behind clouds again and the two of them flared out the black cloaks tied to their wrists and began to climb. Ino dropped off the special package Shino had given her and quietly lifted a window and slipped inside, pulling it shut behind her. She flipped her dyed hair over her shoulder and crept into the corner, waiting for the moonlight to reappear. When it did, the first thing she did was to head over to the uniforms in the corner and pull one of the traditional Suna coats over her clothes, grimacing at the sudden, stifling warmth. And then she focused on the weaponry around her, sorting through boxes of storage seals marked kunai and shuriken and ninja wire. Quiet as a mouse, she waited for the patrol to pass before leaping over to the next corner and then the other, ever aware of the clock ticking down. The back of her neck grew damp under the stifling collar as she sorted through windmill shuriken and more wire. She paused for a second at the boxes of spare puppet parts, but decided to leave them alone. She froze for a moment as she heard a sudden curse split the silence. Shino's scorpion had done its job, and she listened in quiet glee as the genetically modified poison did its job. Within seconds, she heard the slump of a body falling against the door. Nodding in satisfaction, she sent a quick prayer for the infiltrators 2 houses over and resumed her job with a touch more freedom. Even with her experience, there seemed to be far too much equipment for a Chunin exam final. Grunting as she shifted boxes, she flipped through more and more equipment until she hit the payload. She opened a box marked kunai and ran a quick eye over it and was about to close it shut again when something caught her eye. Shifting the scrolls on top aside, she found layers of neatly stacked scrolls, smaller than the ones used to store weapons. Ino had almost no experience with the sealing arts, but even she could tell a difference between these and the other, standard, ones. At the start, she realized that they reminded her of the Heaven and Earth scrolls that they had been given for the second phase. Like those scrolls, they were smaller and more compact, barely bigger than the palm of her hand. Well, she muttered to herself, here goes nothing. She reached for the pouches around her waist and opened one, shivering as a row of bugs crawled up her arms and lined up over the scroll. She held her breath and counted to 30 and then 60 before they quietly marched back into the pouch. She scoffed at her shaking fingers as she unrolled the paper. Her blood ran cold as her eyes ran over the same matrix that had summoned their Chunin teacher in the Forest of Death, rows of kanji irradiating out from the circle in the center. Ino quietly shifted to another box in the pile and looked through it and then another. She estimated at least 150 summoning scrolls hidden with the weaponry. That could be 150 Jonin summoned into their village in the blink of an eye. Images of an entire army flashed through her mind as she undid all the pouches without hesitation, standing as still as a statue as she let them flow all over her and into the boxes. Reaching for her ankles, she took out a larger bug and squeezed, activating the final piece of extra equipment Shino had provided her. The Yamanaka era smiled coldly as minutes passed, and then another column of bugs crawled in through the small gap she'd left in the windowsill. Leave the weapons, she whispered. Suck all the rest dry. Miraculously, or perhaps they'd had a taste of the chakra, the insects understood and left the weapon scrolls alone. She watched as they moved like a regiment through the summoning scrolls, quietly packing the boxes back into place. Engrossed in her work, she almost didn't catch it when the light opposite her room switched on. Ino muffled a curse and slammed herself against the wall, but it was too late, she'd been spotted. She made a split-second decision and squeezed her left shoulder and began counting. And then the sound of an angry roar shattered the quiet. Naruto crept onto the ledge next to Baki's window, mirrored by Shikamaru on the other side. Slowly, with experience born of years of pranking, he slid the window open, careful not to disturb the cloak of invisibility technique. The next instant, the two of them were inside the room, tucking the cloaks back into place as they settled into the rafters of the room. Shikamaru leapt from the edge to the center of the room as Naruto hung upside down and slid the window down before he crept to the door. Hanging upside down, he slid the door open a sliver to keep watch before lying down on the beam and peering at the dimly lit corridor outside, also watching his partner in crime out of the corner of his eye. Behind him, Shikamaru surveyed the room with a practiced eye, kneeling on the edge before shifting a little to his right and leaping onto the floor. Naruto released a tense breath when the floor didn't creak. "Memorize the spots," grunted the Nara as he riffled quickly through the room, opening drawers and checking under the bed and under the covers. When the search turned up nothing, he silently shifted the tatami mats on the floor and peeled back the flooring to look at the hollow space underneath. "Nothing," the Nara whispered. "Are you sure this is?" Naruto only pointed to the corner of the room where 3 copies of Baki's uniform hung from the wall. Shikamaru swore, climbing back up to the rafters and moving to sit next to Naruto. "It's a bust," whispered the Nara. "If there's something, it's not here. Think, where else can it be? Where would an infiltrator not look?" Taoji, whose family often took jobs as builders and had refurbished this place years ago, had shown them the floor plans. Naruto had gone over it with Shikamaru, doing his best to commit it to memory. 8 buildings stood in a row to each side of the main building. The 2 near the gate were guard posts, the one after the building closest to Baki's building was where Ino was going through the armory, and most of the others were for the civilians. "The civilians," murmured Shikamaru. "Nobody would think of the civilians being involved in an invasion. It's the perfect place to hide it, but where would they keep it? There are 6 buildings in total." Shikamaru's face was pale with sweat, his lips moving silently as he shut his eyes and engaged his mind at full capacity. Naruto wasn't as smart, but he had one thing Shikamaru didn't: years of pranking experience. He kicked the Nara out of his contemplation, making the boy glare at him eerily through his goggles. "Look underneath," he muttered. "That's the first place they'd expect us to look because that's where nobody would expect it to be. Bait and switch at its simplest. And if Ibisu's lessons were to be believed, that would just cause harass the civilians, get nothing to show for it. The Leaf is humiliated and looks paranoid, while the Sand stands vindicated. Basic." The 2 boys smirked at each other, their thoughts exactly in sync. "Hey, Naruto," said Shikamaru, "if someone had the plans for a top-secret prank, what would they do with it?" The 2 of them looked at each other. "Keep it on them at all times," they whispered together. A smile slid off their faces when they heard footsteps coming up the stairs at the end of the corridor. Quick as a flash, Naruto edged the door closed. Untying the rope, the 2 of them barely made it out the window before the door slid open. Baki's footsteps entered the room with loud thuds before they stopped. "You know," his voice floated around the room, "I am a master of wind techniques. My sensitivity to the element is such that I can even tell when the air in a room has been disturbed. So why don't you stop hiding?" His footsteps came closer and just come out. The window slid open sharply. Naruto fought the urge to vomit as all the blood rushed to his head. He hung upside down from the beam under the balcony, his arms under Shikamaru's shoulders, straining to hold the boy up with the sole strength of his legs around the slanted wooden pillar. My," said Baki, "I am dealing with a clever foe. But you won't be the first clever leaf nin I've killed tonight. If you hurry, there's a body that's slowly bleeding out on the ground floor." Shikamaru stared up at Naruto, the dark of his goggles, unable to hide the tension in the boy's arms. Baki's heavy footsteps stopped at the balcony above them. Slowly, straining from his very core, Shikamaru lifted his hand up towards Naruto's back. "I admit, I am not so talented at sensing the air in open spaces. But that doesn't mean," achingly slowly, Shikamaru's hand found the small of his back and squeezed, "that I'm not a sensor." The 2 boys held their breath, praying to Kiba's seals. Baki was silent for a moment before shifting. "A crafty foe or my mistake," he muttered. Naruto froze when he felt a sharp sting on his left shoulder. Shikamaru's arms, looped around his, did the same. Both boys began to count backwards from 15 in their heads. Naruto's mind jumbled from the blood rushing to his head. They reached 8 when someone yelled from 3 rooms over. Baki cursed and leapt away. The 2 boys jumped down to the roof beneath them, Naruto unable to resist taking deep breaths of air. His head was swimming, both with the thought of a leaf ninja captured by the sand and their comrade in danger. He froze for a dangerously long second, but Shikamaru made the decision for him. "Etino," muttered the boy before running around to the other side of the house. Naruto gulped and jumped down. Sasuke was not having a good time. Creeping through the dark like an assassin, spurred on by Naruto's words, had been fun, but his legs felt like jelly again as he crawled up the lone trellis under Temari's room and slipped in through the window. "You came," said a husky voice, and Sasuke froze. Sasuke Uchiha was good at many things: hand-to-hand shuriken, fire techniques, even brooding. He was not, however, good with women. Shutting the window behind him and turning around, he came face to face with Temari of the desert, whose painted lips were pulled up into a delighted smile. Sasuke's eyes ran down from those blood-red lips to the loose robe she was wearing and then to her chest area, where the robes were loosely tied. He snapped his gaze back up to meet her gleaming green eyes. "Like what you see?" said Temari, smirking and completely unoffended. "Baki's out tonight, so if you're lucky, you might get to see a whole lot more if you play your cards right." After all, she walked forward slowly like a stalking predator. "You're mine now." And then her lips were on his, soft and warm, and Sasuke knew he was screwed when he failed to react instantly, his hands still limp at his sides, his body processing the new and wonderful feeling. Temari leaned back, her face falling for an instant before she arranged it back into a smile. "What's wrong, Sasuke baby?" she asked, sliding her hands up to his face, and Sasuke had to hide a flinch both at the nickname and the touch. Just a little nervous," he stuttered out, his voice cracking shamefully. "Oh?" A little bit of confidence re-entered her voice. "I understand," she said. "No matter how much you have been neglected by the Leaf, left friendless after your clan was killed, some corner of you still feels something for the village." "That's fine, my dear," she said, running her hands through his hair and then pulling him close. "I'll kiss it all better." This time, Sasuke was ready. When their lips met, he returned the pressure of his own, and without any input from his brain, his hands went around her slim waist and pulled her close as she opened her mouth and deepened the kiss. Both of them were panting when they parted, Sasuke's thoughts spinning out of control as he unconsciously leaned in again for a quick nip before Temari pulled him close. "I'm glad," she said, her voice soft. "I'm glad that I've finally found someone who can look past who I am, who I'm related to, and see me for myself. I've been so scared, waiting in my room after I confessed the plan to you, but I'm glad you chose me over the village. Just 7 more days, and the Leaf will be gone, but you and I will still be together, bonded by our loneliness." Sasuke's ninja brain kicked back into gear and he carefully allowed his body to melt into his embrace, pretending that she wasn't testing his reactions by pulling him close and pouring her heart out to him. A corner of his mind even admired her skill as a ninja. Satisfied by what she felt, Temari pulled back and softly touched her lips to his again. Sasuke was caught between cursing Naruto and naming him the heir to the Uchiha fortune in case of Sasuke's untimely death. "Come," she said, "sit with me, baby." She took his hand and pulled him over to her bed. Sasuke did not run his eyes over her as he followed. He did not. They sat together on the mattress and Sasuke did his best not to focus on the fact that the sheet smelled of Temari, light and ever so slightly floral. Temari ran her hand over his, meeting his gaze from under the shadow of her hair. Clinically, Sasuke noted parted lips and dilated breathing. Because he was a good ninja and did not want to blow his cover by engaging too much in conversation, he leaned down and captured her lips again, threading his hand around the back of her slender neck. Temari answered enthusiastically, her hands coming up on his shoulders. The two of them forwent the need for air as they kissed deeply, shifting closer to each other until Sasuke leaned over too much and they fell into the soft mattress. Sasuke lay on his back, his chest rising and falling sharply as he stared at the ceiling, trying to soak the moment in. Instantly, he wished that the others were also having a time as easy as his, and he wondered that he was ever nervous at the prospect of this mission. "What are you thinking about?" asked Temari softly, linking their hands together. "Naruto," Sasuke answered without thinking, and then winced at how that sounded. "Even though I have been alone for a long time," he hastily added, "he is the one person who's come close to breaching my walls. I want to buy him a mansion and a lifetime supply of ramen," he did not say. "Not like you," he said instead, squeezing his palm against hers. "Not like you," he repeated, unable to think of anything else to say. Temari laughed, mercifully. "Should I be worried that you're thinking of another boy when you kiss me?" she asked, before rolling onto her side and leaning down on her elbow to look at him. Her face softened. "I understand, baby," she said. Sasuke liked the kissing, but he wished that she'd stop calling him that. "Even in your darkness, I'm glad you had that one light. If he is captured, I will plead to Baki for his life. This gift I will give you." Temari said Sasuke in what he hoped was a charming voice, for lack of anything else to say. Despite his lack of social skills, even he knew that "I'll put a hole through your chest if you even lay a finger on my friend" would not be the right thing to say. "Yes, baby." He managed not to twitch at the infernal nickname, but he was now put on the spot. Sasuke's brain reverted to the one thing it could always count on. "I want to fight you," he said dumbly and then proceeded to mentally stuff a chidori down his throat. "In the finals," he added lamely, carefully looking at the ceiling. "When two warriors fight, they can exchange their deepest thoughts with every move of the battle." Sasuke thanked his late father for his habit of dropping meaningless musings at the dinner table. Temari bought it. "My Uchiha warrior," she chuckled. "You do know me," she said, leaning down to brush his lips. "You know a way to a desert woman's heart. To us, war is love and love is war. And you and I, baby," she slid sinuously over his body, lying on top of him, "we're warriors and," her breath mingled with his, "lovers." True to her words, her lips met his in battle, and this time, they moaned as they came together again, tongues dueling and teeth clashing. Temari shifted on top of him and her robes came loose, but she only sat up and opened them further before leaning down again. Sasuke's Sharingan activated and evolved instantly. Everything turned into slow motion as she leaned forwards, and he was. Instantly, Sasuke heard the sound of the window opening, hyper-aware of every instant, and the sound of feet touching the floor. Then he heard a scream of rage. "You fucking whore." His Sharingan deactivated as Temari gave a yelp of fear and rolled off the bed, landing sharply before scrabbling to her feet. Sasuke came back to himself and sat up sharply, coming face to face with an incandescent Sakura who took in his ruffled hair and red-marked swollen lips and charged straight at Temari with her kunai drawn. Sasuke barely had time to jump in between the two girls before the door crashed open and people poured in and the San Jonin sensei came in through the window. "What is going on here?" asked Baki menacingly as even more ninja crept in through the window behind him. "This fucking whore," repeated Sakura, her chest rising and falling in rage, "thought that she could steal away my Sasuke." Temari, who'd been frozen like a deer caught under a hawk, screwed her face up in anger. "You're Sasuke?" she asked, her face flushing. "Sasuke baby is mine. Who the hell do you think you are?" "I'm his teammate, that's who," roared Sakura and Sasuke barely intercepted as she jumped at Temari, who bared her teeth and picked her fan up from the floor. "A nobody, then," she sneered. "Dearest, move aside so I can cut her to pieces." A ninja who Sasuke recognized as Temari's puppeteer sibling whistled. "Catfight, Uchiha. Stand aside, I'm willing to put money on this." "Shut up." Both Temari and Sakura hissed before shooting identical glowers at each other. "All of you shut up," roared Baki. "Temari, why is the Uchiha in your room?" "Uchiha, why is your teammate in Temari's room?" Temari quickly tied her robes back together and answered before Sakura could open her mouth again. "Sasuke and I are together," she hissed, raising her chin at Sakura. "This stalker must have followed him here like the snake that she is. I will grind your bones to dust," roared Sakura, struggling against Sasuke's grip with surprising strength. "Enough," said Baki, "enough." He roared and Sakura settled. "Uchiha," he gritted through clenched teeth. "Why are you in the Kazukiya's daughter's room and why are you in the Kazukiya's daughter's room with two different women?" Sasuke sent up another prayer to Fugaku and did his best to channel his old man. "I am indeed," he said, tilting his chin and pretending that he was worth the fan sewn onto the back of his shirt together with the Kazukiya's daughter. "This girl," he faked a sneer at Sakura, "is nothing but one of my annoying stalkers who must have followed him here." "She's nothing," he added, looking down his nose at his pink-haired teammate. Sasuke knew that both him and Sakura were playing their part, but he had to look away when Sakura stepped abruptly back from his arms and lowered her eyes to the floor, her pink hair falling over her forehead and hiding her eyes. "Ha!" said Temari, "so you see, you," said Baki, "will remain silent. What possessed you to invite a ninja from a rival village here before the finals?" he asked, his voice deadly. But nothing," said Baki firmly, cutting her off sharply. "You have disgraced the family, Temari of the desert. And you, Uchiha," he turned his gaze to Sasuke, "you and your teammate will be coming with me to the Hokage. This matter is out of my hands, but I will see you disciplined if it's the last thing I do." Sasuke only nodded and raised his hands in surrender. His casual behavior only seemed to incense Baki further. The ninja took him by the shoulder and marched him out of the room, with others following behind with Sakura. Sasuke still had his part to play, though. Shrugging off the grip of the older man, he turned back to Temari, who was standing forlorn in her room. "Dearest," he said, and Sakura flinched next to him. "Stay strong. We will meet again at the finals. Until then, I will bear our separation with silent strength," he finished with a flourish. Temari's eyes flashed, and she nodded, lifting her head again. "Touching," Baki said dryly. "It warms my heart, truly." "Kankuro," he shot out, "there are some modifications from Suna for your puppet lying on the ground floor. See that it is cleared out when I'm back," he said, "or there will be hell to pay." Sasuke watched the boy pale and nod, but let himself and Sakura be dragged out without further protest. His Sharingan flickered as he relived what he'd last seen with his cursed eyes, and he decided that Naruto was the brother of his heart. Ino watched, heart in her mouth, as ninja from all over the compound ran over to Temari's room, mentally running over Shino's instructions. Moments later, the window slid open and Naruto jumped in, pulling his goggles over his head and looking at her. "What's the matter?" he asked, looking at her dumbly. "Shikamaru hit the distraction alarm, but we felt you calling for us." "We got massively lucky," Ino replied. "I just got spotted by the house opposite us and you guys distracted him just before he came over." Naruto whistled in agreement before ducking as the Sand Jonin sensei and a procession of ninja led Sasuke and Sakura out of the compound. "That's our distraction gone," she muttered. "Hey, wait, there's a body outside." "Pulled him into the grass already," Naruto said, and she breathed a sigh of relief. The Uzumaki looked around and spotted the insects still teeming in the boxes. "You found the payload, then?" Ino was about to explain when somebody knocked on their door. "Is someone inside? Where's the guard?" Naruto froze for a second before diving for the corner and jamming a sand bandana over his head, yanking his mask down from his mouth. Ino looked desperately at the bug boxes and her mind went into overdrive. "Naruto, come here," she hissed, pulling him into the center of the room. She ripped her gown open and jerked the blonde towards her sharply. They overbalanced and Ino felt the wind get knocked out of her as Naruto landed heavily on top of her and he scrambled to get up even as she jammed her lips onto his and his hands. "I'm coming in." The sand ninja opened the door to find another embracing couple on the floor, locked together at the lips, dresses ripped open and the boy with his hands up his partner's shirt. Both of them froze and looked up at him, horror written all over their faces. He chuckled. "There must be something in the air tonight," he said. "You're lucky it's me who found you and not Baki. Lady Tamari's in for a hard time already," he laughed. "Hey, where's the guard gone?" Naruto suddenly realized his position and jerked away from Ino, who whimpered and pulled her clothes over her body. "Wasn't there when he croaked, still a little dazed, clenching and unclenching his left hand. "Ah, he's probably off doing the same thing. All of you young folks, all passion and hot blood. I suppose there's no time like it when you're going to war in a week," the man said. Ino ignored everything her body was telling her at the moment and made the man's word pull her back to reality. Yeah, she choked out. "Listen, can you?" The sand nin raised his hands. "Hey, missy, I'm no snitch. Just make sure there's a guard here when you're," he snickered, finished. "Just be sure to mind the kunai, eh?" He laughed again and Ino felt herself flush. "Yeah, thanks, old man," Naruto said. I'm gone," said the sand nin, shutting the door behind him, still chuckling. Ino crawled to her knees and made sure that he was really gone before she turned to face Naruto. "Did we ask the Uzumaki?" his mouth hanging open. "Yeah. And I." "Why yeah." "Oh," said Naruto, turning a deep red. I'm sorry." "Don't worry about it," said Ino, more breezily than she felt. "It happens on a mission, right?" "Right," said Naruto, before perking up. "Hey, the mission. Listen, Ino, I need to go, things have gone really, really bad." Yeah, said Ino, feeling oddly formal. "I'll be done here soon and I'll find my way out. You guys be careful." "You got it," said Naruto, grinning. "Hey wait," he said, his smile falling off. "My cheeks," he gestured to the lines on his face. In the sliver of moonlight arcing into the room, Ino found that Naruto's characteristic markings made him look rather roguish. She waved her hand at the curtain-like cloth hanging from the sand bandana. "They hid most of it," she said. "And it was pretty dark in here." "Great," said Naruto. "Alright, I'm going to." "Hey, wait," she repeated his words. Naruto crouched at the window, still watching absently for the patrol. "How were you so good at it?" she asked, flushing a little. Naruto smiled, a full, wide smile that lit up his entire face, and Ino felt heart flutter. "I had practice." "Oh? The good ninja never tells. Stop acting so smug." Ino said, before lowering her head, "It was my first time, so." "Hey, Ino," she felt the rough calluses of his fingertips lifting her chin up and then she felt his lips riding over her own. Ino lifted her hands around his neck and opened up to his invitation, feeling his hand settle around her waist. They stepped back, both breathing heavily, and Ino lifted her fingers up to feel her lips. She blinked and the room was empty. "My first kiss," she mumbled to herself before feeling her lips curl into a smile. That Naruto, acting so cool. "I'm going to make him take responsibility." Shikamaru crept around the walls of the house as the commotion drew the attention of all the ninja in the area. He did not dare to breathe as he peeked in through the windows, sliding along the balcony of the house. Lying in the third room from the end was the body of the proctor from the preliminaries, drenched in blood, chest weakly rising and falling. He had been bandaged roughly, but the wrappings were already soaked red. Shikamaru, for once, did not stop to think. He pulled the window open and crept into the room, landing next to the body. Without hesitating, he ripped the cloak of his back and tore it into strips, tying it tightly over the bandages. "First aid, that's the right step," said a voice behind him, and Shikamaru felt the hairs on his arms stand up. No, don't stop on my account, you're doing good, kid." The voice was deep and entirely too gleeful. Shikamaru went through his actions mechanically, expecting a kunai through the back of his head any instant, but his body seemed to be on autopilot. His mind came up with and rejected hundreds of scenarios in milliseconds because every one ended with his cold body next to the proctor's. Bandages reinforced, he turned around to find a giant of a man standing in the corner. He was dressed in San Jonin fatigues, and his dark eyes were regarding Shikamaru's black getup in amusement. Shikamaru pulled a kunai out of his pocket. "Oh, a wee ninja tool," cooed the man. "Your chakra suppressed, what are you going to do, tickle me with it?" "You can't know that," answered the Nara, his mind flying. "Surrender, and the Hokage might still give you mercy." The Sand Nin snorted. "What, that old fart? I eat 10 of him for breakfast every day. You're going to need to do better than that." "I don't really. The entire place is surrounded, and the Anbu will mobilize in 10 seconds. Kill me if you want, but there's no way you can escape." "Now that's a good bluff," said the Jonin, nodding his head in appreciation. "Unfortunately, I don't believe you. Also unfortunately, someone's coming." Shikamaru whipped his head around as someone put their hands on the door to slide it open. Strangely enough, he heard a toad croak and then he felt strong hands on his shoulder. The next thing he knew, he was standing somewhere pitch dark, his eyes unable to see even an inch around him. The Nara didn't hesitate, stabbing himself in the knee with his kunai. "Oof," said the same voice. "Now you're getting somewhere. You kids are really something, huh?" The light sparked and Shikamaru suddenly found himself standing in a long pink corridor, stretching endlessly on each side. The Sand Jonin was standing a few hands away from him, a little fire flickering in his fingertips. "This sucks," he heard a voice coming from somewhere all around him, echoing through the area. "Tamari gets to suck face with the Uchiha, and here I am, cleaning up the Sand's messes. How am I even meant to get rid of this with a puppet?" "Don't look so freaked out, kid," the Sand Nin chuckled. "Come closer, it's about to get good, you don't want to miss this." Shikamaru didn't move, raising his kunai instead. "Oh come on. I could have killed you about 500 separate ways in the past 2 minutes. I'm not going to do it now, just for the hell of it. Is that an indefinite promise, or?" Shikamaru asked dryly, but stepped forward. Suddenly the walls of the pathway turned translucent to give him a view of the room he'd just been standing in. "Nifty trick, huh? You guys pulled a neat mission, but it was depressingly amateur. Always remember, the first rule is to not hamstring yourself by cutting off your chakra." "I'm gonna need a storage scroll and lots of cleaner," muttered Kankuro through the diaphanous partition, setting his puppet down in the corner. The boy rubbed his temples before walking out of the room. "So, he'll be back in about 2 minutes. What's the plan, chief?" "But you, get out of here, get the body, get out. Get him medical help." "Oh ho, a smartass, eh?" The Jonin chuckled. "Don't sweat it. I've already given him some plasma pills. He'll bleed more, but it's going to keep him stable for a little more time. Little guy needs to stay alive just a little longer." Shikamaru's brain stuttered to a halt at that, before changing directions and rumbling again. "Who are you?" he asked. "What's your game?" "Now there's some manners, finally. Kids nowadays, you'd think they'd been raised in a zoo." Shikamaru rolled his eyes. "Oh hold on now, there's been a twist in this tale." Shikamaru watched as the window to the room slipped open and Naruto crept into the room. "So that's your partner, is he? To think I'd see him here, of all places. Gamajiro, belay my last order." Everything clicked into place. "You're Jiraiya of the fucking Sannin," Shikamaru deadpanned, even though his body went weightless with relief. "Fucking? Dear boy, I wish. Tsunade, not Orochimaru, before you ask. I don't know why that keeps coming up. Now, what's Blondie going to do?" "How do you know he's blonde?" asked Shikamaru before he could stop himself. Jiraiya turned his head to look at him. For the first time, Shikamaru noticed the red lines under his eyes. "Kid, I'm the leaf spy master. I know everything, now shut up and let me watch the show." Naruto was crouched down next to the proctor, checking for a pulse. Suddenly, the blonde looked up and then he was climbing up to the rafters. "Sharper hearing, Good reflexes, too," muttered Jiraiya. The door opened and Kankuro walked in again, holding a large scroll under his arm and a bucket of cleaning supplies in his other hand. Shikamaru watched Naruto watch Kankuro, looking like an overgrown bat looking down at the puppeteer. "Come on, kid," said Jiraiya as Kankuro unrolled his scroll. "Show me something good." Kankuro placed the scroll on top of the proctor's body. Naruto crept down the other side of the room and before Kankuro had unrolled it and made the seal, he had a kunai around the Sand Ninja's throat. "Make a noise and I kill you," said Naruto, his voice a deep growl. Kankuro raised his hand slowly. Naruto reached into his pocket and started pulling out equipment from kunai and shuriken to small scrolls and a paintbrush. "Move and I kill you." Kankuro did not move. Naruto reached his other hand into his pocket and pulled out what Shikamaru recognized as one of Choji's plasma pills. "Open your mouth," ordered Naruto. "I said open it." Is he acting out the final scene from Action Ninja 9? The Return of the Black Wave? asked Jiraiya incredulously. What sort of idiot is this kid? Does he seriously think? Kankuro opened his mouth. Jiraiya slapped his hand to his face. Naruto forced the pill down Kankuro's throat. Swallow it or I swear I'll put a kunai through your throat, said Jiraiya, together with Naruto. Kid's lucky that the Kazukiage doesn't let his kids watch any movies. I've got one of my own adaptations coming out this winter, he added. You're insane, surmised Shikamaru. Oh, indubitably, said Jiraiya. Hold tight now, he's gonna hit him with the good bit. That was a slow-acting poison you just swallowed. Undetectable, untraceable, incurable, said Naruto menacingly. It's got only one antidote in the world and that antidote is in my safe house. The plant that it came from is now extinct. You cannot find it anywhere else, you cannot make it yourself. In 7 days, you're going to start feeling your toes get numb. By the 10th, you won't be able to touch your wiener and feel it. By the 12th, you won't be able to speak. 14 days in, Jiraiya mouthed along with him, you're going to be a prisoner in your own body. I hear they make you mummies in the desert. You're going to be locked into your own body while they dry you up and then you're going to scream and scream helplessly while they shut you up and lock you away until you die silently begging for help. Oh, a classic, said Jiraiya, wiping a fake tear from his eyes. Beautiful delivery, kid's got real talent. What do you want? Asked Kankuro quietly. To his credit, his voice did not shake. I want you to think very carefully about what you love more. Your village or your life. Oh, Ninja Impact 16, said Jiraiya, sounding delighted. Your friend is a man of good taste, You are going to tell your superior that you disposed of the body. You will clean it up after I am gone. You will not speak of this to anyone or you will be dead before the full moon rises. Night of the Ninja 4, murmured Shikamaru before Jiraiya could speak up. My dad loves that crap. Crap. Jiraiya shot him an affronted look. Alright, agreed Kankuro. How can I get the antidote? You can get it, Naruto paused, by going up and getting me the plans for the invasion. Jiraiya whistled, loudly and at length. The ball's on this kid. Where has Sarutobi been hiding him? Kankuro stiffened. That's impossible. I can't. You can't. You can't. Naruto brought the kunai against Kankuro's throat. You want to die now or you want to die later, scum. Because you will die if you don't follow my every instruction. Ninja Bride 2. The return of the Ninja Bride, said Jiraiya and Shikamaru together and then looked at each other appraisingly. You don't know what you're asking of me. I know exactly what I'm asking, Kankuro of the Sand. Kankuro's eyes went wide. Yes, I know exactly who you are. I know who your family is. I know who you're working with. I know where you'll be sitting 7 days from now. You have a choice, Kankuro, said the Uzumaki, tugging threateningly at the Sand Nin's throat. Make the wrong choice, and everyone you love will be dead before they raise their weapon. Make the right one, and the Hokage might show mercy. I don't recognize that one, said Jiraiya. A bit weak compared to the other ones. It's probably an original. And why am I indulging you? Jiraiya winked. I'm very charismatic. Kankuro rose to his feet as Naruto kicked his weapons aside and backed away. Jiraiya clicked his tongue. And he was doing so well he made some quick hand seals and pointed his finger at Kankuro. The puppeteer stumbled for a second before continuing out of the room. Ninjutsu, explained Jiraiya without prompting. Kid's good, but he forgot to warn him not to raise the alarm or return with weapons. Now he'll be too busy trying not to swallow his tongue out of fear to think about any of that. Shikamaru mentally raised his estimation of Jiraiya's threat level to the top of his terrifying list. Naruto scrambled to his feet, pacing around in frustration. Shikamaru, where the hell are you? You better not be dead or in Gaara's room when Kankuro gets there. Do I call for help? Call for backup. Arg, the Uzumaki ran his hands tensely through his hair. This mission was a fucking roller coaster. I'm going to kick Abisu's ass once I get out, he better pay me enough to buy a palace. Shikamaru, where the fuck are you? Your mom's gonna kill me if you're dead. You should let me out, said Shikamaru. He's going to blow it if he keeps this up. Relax, kid. I'm here, aren't I? Let the kid take it all the way. He's done a solid job so far. Why Gaara's room, though? It's the safest place to hide any plans. Gaara's got a defense nothing gets through and he always carries a gourd of sand around with him. It's the perfect place to keep something you don't want to found. Jiraiya hissed a breath through his teeth. And 2 rookies figured this out. Hell, it would have taken me about 30 more minutes to find them. Naruto's a professional at this stuff, Shikamaru said, making Jiraiya peer at the boy in interest. Professional, you say? Can't say I dislike the sound of that. Naruto stopped moving again and the door opened moments later. Stay outside, the blonde called. Roll the scroll into the room and leave it here. Return to the room in 15 minutes. The scroll will be here and everything else will be gone. Compensating for his lapse, nice. What about my antidote? Where do I find you? Find me? Asked Naruto. You're going to spend your miserable life looking over your shoulders, hiding from shadows, and afraid to leave your room. You're going to die inside every day until death is the only release you can find. And then, I will find you and pass my judgment." Naruto paused. "Roll the scroll in." Kuro complied and slid the door shut. "And that's my cue," said Jiraiya. Gamma. There was a sudden sharp itching feeling in his gut and suddenly Naruto, the proctor, and the scroll were all flat on the ground next to Shikamaru. "Hey, what the fuck?" asked Naruto. "Shikamaru. What the?" Jiraiya pulled a brush out and painted some lightning-fast shapes on it. He produced another scroll with a puff of smoke and then made some hand seals. The next moment, both of them vanished. "Hey Shika, who is this guy?" Naruto's words were cut off as Shikamaru felt another jerk in his gut. The next thing he knew, he was rolling out of something and onto the ground and his friends were crying out in alarm and rushing to his side. Naruto groaned on the ground next to him. What just happened? Shikamaru felt something sticking to his forehead. Reaching up with shaking hands, he ripped a note off and focused on the words. "Thanks for the assist, kid. Taking Hei to the hospital. Head over to the Hokage and wait your turn while the Uchiha has a new hole ripped into him. See you guys soon. P.S. Say hi to Naruto from me." "Troublesome," muttered the Nara and let the chatter of his friends wash over him. There would be hell to pay for this. 159. Chapter 4. Baki was fuming. "Is this how your allies are treated, third Hokage? I find your genin consorting with my Kazukiya's daughter in the dead of the night in the middle of the Sans compound. His teammate outright attacks and threatens Tamari in the sanctity of her own room. When I come to you for clarity, you make me wait for half an hour and then you tell me that they will both get off with a slap of the wrist. Tamari's honor has been compromised. Sand would be well within their rights to disqualify the Uchiha, to have him struck from the Leaf's ranks, even to draft him forcibly into the Sand ranks with a sham marriage to atone for his depravity. I want to see some real punishment." The Hokage's face remained so still that Baki was reminded of the mountain behind the window. The lights in the Hokage's office were turned down at this time in the night, contouring his craggy face with dark lines. The old man looked at him with beady eyes, puffing steadily on his pipe. "Peace, Jonin Baki. You are correct. A betrayal of terms with allies deserves serious punishment." The Hokage's calmness only made Baki angrier, but the man continued speaking before he could open his mouth. "As it happens, my secretary forwarded the complaints to relevant channels as soon as you lodged it with her. I was simply waiting for my subordinates to present their reports. As it happens, they seem to be here and ready to deliver their verdict." "Sharp as ever, master." Baki jerked in his seat as a large man pulled a chair out from next to him and flopped casually into it. "Mind if I take that?" The man, whose red overcoat and strange headband gave him away as Jiraiya of the Sannin, reached over and swiped the small cup of tea that was sitting in front of Baki. "Been a long night, my throat is absolutely parched." Baki fought hard to restore his equanimity, momentarily struck dumb by the road sage's appearance. For all his talent with sensing and wind-style techniques, he hadn't felt the man enter the room, hadn't even felt him walk up behind him until he'd settled into the chair behind him. By all of Sand's investigations, the man wasn't even supposed to be in Fire Country during the planned invasion. "Half a century on this planet and your manners still leave much to be desired," Jiraiya reprimanded the Hokage. "If you are thirsty, please pour yourself some tea of your own instead of stealing from my guest," he said, indicating the tea service ad on the desk. "Allow me, Lord Jiraiya," said another voice, and this time, Baki couldn't help whirling around in his seat. A ninja melted out of the shadows of the room, dark tendrils weaving and twisting around his body like the fingers of a caressing lover. "Shikaku," rumbled Jiraiya. "If you would be so kind." The Jonin commander of the Leaf leaned forward and poured the tea into a fresh cup, placing it in front of Baki. "This is a first flush, grown in the hills of northwestern Fire Country, bordering rice fields. People say it's not as good as the produce from Tea Country, but I've always thought that it has a certain zest to it. Wouldn't you agree, Lord Hokage?" Shikaku asked, moving silently to stand behind the two seated ninjas. Baki traced the steam rising in spirals from the warm liquid with his eyes and calmed himself. Any ninja worth their salt would be on edge in a room with two S-ranked and an A-ranked ninjas from foreign nations. Blowing a controlled measure of air out of his nose, he kept his tone carefully even. "Riveting as this discussion may be, third Hokage, the matter of your ninja infiltrating the Sand compound remains. The hour is late and I would have words about it before it grows even later," he said, more bravely than he was currently feeling. "Youth," snorted Jiraiya, like Baki wasn't a grown man of 36. "Always in a hurry. You should learn to appreciate the little things in life a little more, Baki." "Really, Jiraiya," said the Hokage sternly. "Stop antagonizing our ally. Put that smart mouth of yours to good use and report." "As you say, master." Jiraiya reached into his pocket and tossed a small scroll onto the table. Before Baki's eyes, it expanded and unrolled, popping open to reveal sheafs and sheafs of paper marked with dark ink. Baki's heart stopped. "What is this?" he croaked, flipping through the pages and seeing his cage's ambitions collapse before his eyes. I thought a Jonin would be able to understand it, mused Shikaku. It appears to be maps of the Leaf Village, with staging points and targeted areas, along with keys to multiple sites in the barrier seal. Baki's chakra roared through his body as he tried to leap out of his seat, but his body refused to comply. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw dark threads pulling around his ankle and crawling up his calves. The third Hokage stood up instead, moving around the table. I wouldn't try that, said the old man, placing his hands on the table and looking down at the documents. Did you know, Jonin Baki, that the Leaf has never been invaded by another nation? Baki struggled helplessly in his seat, his eyeballs rolling, but the Hokage continued unconcerned. The gates of Iowa have been torn down, Cloud's temples have been razed to the ground, even your own village has burnt for 7 days in the Second War. But not the Leaf, never the Leaf. We do not hide our hidden village, contrary to the name. We do not invade ourselves, but depend on the strength of our bonds with our allies to stay untouched. 10 out of 10, master, chuckled Jiraiya from next to him, casually writing in a notepad next to Baki. That was great stuff, I think I'm going to adapt some of that. The Hokage paid him no mind. There has indeed been a betrayal of an alliance, Sand Ninja, he said, his dark eyes boring into Baki's own. Shall we discuss some punishment? You can't prove anything, Baki gasped out, still struggling against the shadows creeping up his body. We can't, agreed Shikaku, his voice betraying no strain despite his silent capture of Baki. But we can recall our Anbu and put them at every one of those points and objectives. We can cut off all outgoing communication from your base to your village, allowing your cage to walk into a counterattack blind. We can even invite forces from Grass and Waterfall to the finals and have them reinforce our own. The other nations will watch as Sand is utterly crushed under Konoha's boot. Trade will come to a standstill, missions will be sent from the Wind Daimyo's court to the Leaf even more than they are now, and your civilians will starve and curse you as they die in droves. Sand as it is will cease to exist, a footnote in the history of the world. And perhaps Rock will finally do what they've been threatening for years and finally move the borders past the Great Northern Oasis. Asked Jiraiya. Baki slumped into his seat. What do you want to know? Shikamaru stood in front of the Hokage, feeling as morose as the Sand Jonin had looked when he trudged out of the Hokage's office and the secretary had sent the Leaf Genin in. The triumphant rush had been replaced by an icy feeling in his gut as the Hokage spoke in a deadly voice. So, said the old man quietly. Even Jiraiya, who was standing behind the Hokage, looked solemn, a look that was mirrored on the faces of the Jonin sensei and parents who gathered in the office. Who is willing to take responsibility? Naruto stepped forward. Even the normally rambunctious blonde seemed to have picked up on the oppressive atmosphere in the room because his voice was soft. I am, Lord Hokage. And has your Jonin leader made you aware of what you're taking responsibility for? Several heads lowered around the room, but Naruto kept his gaze on the Hokage as he spoke. I led an unsanctioned mission. Shikamaru's hands curled into fists as Choza Akimichi sneered at Naruto's difficulty with the unfamiliar word into an allied stronghold because I thought that I was given bad intel. I did not notify my superior about the change in mission parameters, even though he gave me the original mission. I put my teammates and fellow genin, 5 of whom are clan heirs, at risk of capture, torture, and death. I put the last carrier of a valued bloodline in a situation where he could have been struck from the ninja role or even co-opted into a different nation's military because of the nature of his relationship with a prominent dignitary. I threatened an allied Kage's son with death. I left a body poisoned with a compound that can be traced back to the Leaf's Aburum clan. I prioritized the safety of a single ninja over information that could prove vital to the village's protection. Kakashi shifted ever so slightly. White, said the Hokage. Shikamaru felt his father's iron grip on his shoulder squeeze harder. As inspired as you thought your idea with chakra seals to be, did you consider footprints? Scuff marks on points of entry. Even the displacement of the dust where you stood. For a ninja who is unable to make a single clone, did you consider your skills in stealth superior to highly trained black ops specialists in the village? Did you think a few years of foolish pranks and sneaking put you on the level of those who have spent years and even decades learning the field of infiltration? No, Lord Hokage. No, what, Genin? No, I did not think. Exactly. Thundered the Hokage. You did not think, Genin Uzumaki, before you commandeered a mission into an area with 17 enemy Jonin and 46 enemy Chunin. You did not think, before you put the lives of your comrades at risk. You did not think that this might have repercussions for the village beyond your foolish mind's comprehension. You did not think that you are a rookie genin and not a trusted jonin of the village to change and dictate the terms of your mission like your captain in wave. Naruto seemed to shrink with every word his commander said, his chin dipping to his chest. I have spent 27 hours in this office at this point. I am tired, angry, and frankly disappointed in you, Genin Uzumaki, said the Hokage, making Naruto flinch. Since punishment seems to be the order of the night, are you willing to stand and listen to yours? Shikamaru's body moved on its own, breaking out of his father's grip and speaking without any conscious input from his brain. Naruto wasn't the only commander on this mission, Lord Hokage, he heard himself say. I was the person who planned it with him, worked out the kinks in his plan. I convinced him and the others that genin performing this mission would offer the leaf plausible deniability. I convinced him that the fallout wouldn't be as bad if Chunin exam hopefuls were discovered spying on their competition. I helped him assign mission roles. Shikamaru's words seemed to break the dam. Sasuke stepped forward, shaking off his own Jonin-sensei's grip. I accepted the mission of my own volition, Lord Hokage, he said, his voice steady. I was fully aware of the risks, yet I chose to go forward anyway, in what I imagined would be to the benefit of the village. I am also to blame. I didn't think of the consequences of my acts either, and I asked to be punished the same as my teammate. The other genin stepped forward too, fighting against their parents and Jonin-sensei, each of them protesting that they had all jumped into the mission without any coercion, that they were also party to Naruto's mistakes. Shikamaru felt a sudden rush of pride for all his friends. The Hokage raised his hand. So the rookies are looking to share the blame, are you? Even accepting the punishment that I will give him. I didn't want to abandon my teammate, Lord Hokage, said Sakura meekly, glancing out of the corner of her eyes at her father's inscrutable face that Shikamaru had only ever seen smiling. I am willing to take the blame as well. Team 10 went into this with both eyes open, Lord Hokage, said Ino, stepping forward. I personally fought to keep my place in the mission instead of allowing Genin and Yazuka to take my role. That was an outright lie, but Kiba didn't protest it, nodding his agreement. The active members of Team 8 also participated willingly, Shino spoke up. I personally volunteered to man and commandeer our makeshift mission central, unthinking of any possible consequence beyond the immediate invasion. I too am in the wrong. Naruto was looking around the room in speechless shock, his eyes flitting to every person who came forward to speak. Lord Hokage, shouted Inoichi, I protest. That boy obviously coerced my daughter into participating and now she's speaking up to cover his mistakes. If anyone should be punished, it should be him alone. Choza boomed his agreement from next to him. Ino, who had always been her father's spoiled princess, threw Inoichi a dirty look. Naruto can't coerce me into anything, father, Lord Hokage. Team 10 stands by its previous statement. Choji, always docile, took a look at his father's angry face and swallowed heavily before he nodded in agreement. The brats have all thrown their lot in, Lord Third, Kiba's mother spoke up, her teeth bared in a grin. I say let them all be punished. Just so, agreed the Hokage, even as Sakura's father protested and the Aburam clan head buzzed a little loudly. Very well. Since the details of this mission will be henceforth an S-rank secret, all of you will receive an unexplained black mark on your records. Shikamaru's heart slid down into his stomach. The Hokage continued speaking. Of course, the records themselves shall remain unsealed, so all the village will see is the blemish on your records. I dare say lips will wag and gossips will gossip, and wilder stories abound until every one of you are looked upon with suspicion by your fellow Leaf Ninja, even by the civilians. Teammates will decline to work with you, missions will be rerouted away from you, and of course, all of this will reflect on your individual clans. That sounds about right, doesn't it, Jonin Haddock? Kakashi's lone eye was directed straight forward as he stepped forward and nodded. Shikamaru was perhaps the only genin who realized why the Haddock had been specifically singled out, but he couldn't be bothered to feel any sympathy as his mind tried to process the full implications of the Hokage's words. The ashen faces of his friends reflected what was probably visible on his face as well. No. Naruto cleared the line of genin and knelt in front of the Hokage, his fist clenched on the aged wooden floor. No, Lord Hokage. I was the only leader of this mission. I did ask them to join and even baited many of them into action when they were hesitant. I seduced the Kazukiya's daughter under the guise of a fellow Leaf Ninja and I still sent him into the mission as a distraction with my own teammate. I scouted out the entire mission and made the plan and I asked for Shikamaru's help to make it better only because I knew how smart he was. The fault is mine and mine alone. I will take all the punishment alone. Shikamaru opened his mouth again and Sasuke furiously did the same to his left. The Nara felt a sharp prick in his neck and slapped his hand to his side, pulling out a thin senbon. He opened his mouth but no sound came out. The lone Anbu dropped down from the ceiling, senbon arranged like claws in his fist. Decorum shall be maintained in the Hokage's office, he said quietly. None of the adults said a word. Thank you, Wolf, said the Hokage. Very well, he continued. Genin Uzumaki will make the choice, then. As my punishment stands, all the rookie genin will be fined the fees of their 20 next D ranks, or 5 C ranks, whichever comes first. The Jonin sensei of Team 7, 8 and 10, as well as elite teacher Ibisu, shall forfeit 3 months of their salary for their failure in teaching their charges proper procedure and chain of command. Shikamaru couldn't bring himself to look at Asuma sensei. Gen and Uzumaki will forfeit every mission pay for the next 18 months, Shikamaru inhaled sharply. For a clanless orphan like Naruto, that was tantamount to a death sentence. Furthermore, an official letter of reprimand will be added to the file numbered 012607, citing dereliction of duty and undisciplined conduct. Said letter will be available on public record and will preclude you from ever taking any post in the village's administration, up to and including Hokage. All the tension seemed to seep out of Naruto's body, leaving only his hand supporting his body. The blonde looked like he was about to keel over, his blue eyes staring unseeingly at the floor. Do you understand the terms of this punishment? Naruto blinked once, slowly. Yes, Lord Hokage, he said, his voice quieter than Shikamaru had ever heard it. It echoed around the room, stabbing straight through the Nara's chest. Do you agree, or are you willing to share it with your team? The letter of reprimand shall be converted to 8 black marks, as discussed. Sasuke screamed in silent anger, restrained by his teacher. Sakura collapsed to her knee like Naruto, her eyes shining, her hands clasped together in a prayer for mercy from the Leaf's commander. Even Shikamaru found himself screaming inside his mind, yelling at Naruto to decline, to tell him that they would figure something out, that he shouldn't have to give his dream up for their sake. The Hokage remained unmoved, his attention only on the kneeling blonde. Naruto cleared his throat wetly. Can I take the fines for the others as well? I didn't listen to my teachers, and I talked my friends into it. They shouldn't suffer for me. Something flashed in the Hokage's eyes, but passed too quickly for Shikamaru to analyze it. Yes, said the Hokage. Considering the stipend of your teachers and the cumulative fine, the time period will be doubled to 3 years. Do you accept it and all the rest with it? Kiba burst forward with his fists raised, intent on pounding sense into the stupid blonde. His mother smoothly grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and bashed his head, even as he mouthed ugly words and struggled. Shikamaru's hands felt cold. Only hours ago, he'd felt drunk in the success of their op, satisfied that they'd managed to prevent a fellow ninja from dying, smug that they'd outsmarted the sand and protected the leaf in a single stroke. Now, even as he understood why the Hokage was punishing Naruto, his heart, an organ he barely paid any mind to, rebelled, thinking uglier and uglier thoughts. Do you accept the terms, Genin Uzumaki? The Hokage repeated, his voice as unyielding as stone. I do, Lord Hokage. Naruto's voice cracked, a terrible, wrenching noise. Then it is settled. Scribe, note the terms and see that it is done. Lord Hokage, shouted Choza. The boy has put my son and all of our children at risk. A reprimand isn't enough, he deserves a demotion or a suspension at the very least. Ino shrieked in silent rage, racing at the man and pounding her fists ineffectively on his chest. She might as well have been a fly for all it affected the man. Inoichi grabbed her by the waist, even as she kicked and raged. Stand down, Ino, or I will recommend a suspension for you too. Ino mouthed something rude enough to turn Inoichi's ears pink. Incandescent with rage, the man kicked the door of the room open and dragged his struggling daughter out of the room. Well, that was dramatic, said Jiraiya, coming to stand next to the Hokage. Pulled at my heartstrings, it really did. Shino buzzed so loudly that it almost drowned out the ringing in Shikamaru's own ears. While the Yamanaka and the Akimichi do have a point, the boy has still shown some measure of talent. Even a loose cannon has its uses in an army, I say. Besides, the plan may have been ill-advised, but it was one that even a new Chunin could have been proud of. Another elder stepped out of the darkness, his cane tapping as he walked. I'm forced to agree with Jiraiya, he said, his voice cold and rasping. The boy is a liability, but he is not as useless as his records would show. Perhaps some corrective training might be in order, Hiruzen. That will be for me to decide, Danzo, replied the Hokage. But for once, I am in agreement with you too. Genin, he said, prove to me that this was the act of a soldier with some measure of potential, instead of that of a careless child, playing at heroics and ninja. You have one chance, the Hokage raised his finger, to be promoted this cycle. Do so, and you have some chance at recouping your honor and improving your record. Fail, and you will be barred from promotion for the next decade, and you will not be allowed to participate in the Chunin exams for the same time period. Is that acceptable? Naruto might have been deaf for all that he reacted, still staring at the floor. Shikamaru realized with a start that there were tears running down the side of his face and felt even worse than he had in the moment prior. Slowly, the blonde nodded, indicating that he had been paying attention after all. And is that satisfactory to you, Jonin Akimichi? The Hokage asked Choji's father. The boy fights the Hyuga prodigy in the first round, yes. Choza sneered, drawing hateful looks from Sasuke and Kiba. I agree, Lord Hokage, and I will look forward to the weekend. Very well, then, said the Hokage. One final thing. Since Genin Uzumaki has agreed to take on the punishment for his cohort, my hands are tied. However, there will be a festival on the occasion of the Chunin exam finals, and the fairgrounds will need to be arranged and put into order. With over 1,000 guests camping in the area, latrines will need to be dug and connected to the sewers, and the river diverted to flow underground. Normally, several D ranks are given out to accomplish this task, but I think some pro bono work will be in order for the other 7, yes? Any objections? Very well. The material is arranged and all of you can report by noon tomorrow at the very latest to get started. The Hokage suddenly sounded worn out and weary. As unbelievable as it may seem, it pains me to censure the budding leaves of Konoha's own tree. One day, you will realize why I came down so harshly on all of you, but until then, I can only ask that the quality of your service not suffer. Your captains and parents will discuss the matter with you further. Until then, you are all dismissed. Uzumaki, stay behind. Kakashi, take Uchiha home and ensure that he remains there. That will be all. Naruto's world had ended about 10 minutes ago. He held himself up by his knee and his fist, but the ground seemed to be spinning out from under him, the walls tilting and twisting. Naruto, the old man's voice came to him faintly, as if he was speaking from very, very far away. The blood was pounding through his ears so hard it was difficult for him to make the words out. Naruto, repeated the Hokage. Look at me. Naruto did not lift his gaze, he couldn't have, even if he tried. He swallowed once, painfully, but kept his eyes on the floor, looking unseeingly at the grains on the wood. Naruto, please. He kept his position. He felt like any little movement would end with tears, his traitorous eyes burning and itching. He squeezed them shut, forcefully, grinding his teeth together. He heard shuffling, then the sound of Sarutobi's footsteps as he rounded the desk. The Hokage knelt next to him and put a shrunken hand on his back. Ever since he was a child, Naruto had craved these little touches, from Kakashi, from Iruka, but most of all from the first person who'd ever touched him with something other than disgust. Right now, it felt like the tables were turned, that it was his skin that was churning and rebelling at the contact. I am sorry, Naruto. He clenched his teeth together even harder at those words, unsure if a sob or a yell would spring out if he opened his lips. The Hokage continued speaking. I know the punishment is hard, my child, but I want you to understand why I had to do it. Those words did it. Like a drunk, he jerked away from the Hokage's touch and tottered aside. He looked at the wretched man still kneeling on the floor, his face solemn and sad, and he wanted to take his fists and break that nose, beat his cheeks in, rip that stupid tuft of hair off his chin. You're angry. Deservedly so. Anger overtook the hurt even more. He felt it rush through him, burning like the Nine Tails chakra, and he wrapped his fingers into a fist to stop himself from charging the man. The Hokage seemed to take his silence as permission to continue. Precedent, Naruto. Do you know what that word means? The bastard had taken his dream away, the one thing that had carried him through every moment of loneliness and contempt and neglect, and he had the stones to now speak riddles in a kind voice that would make him feel better. Naruto trembled with rage, every fiber of his body telling him to ruin the man sitting in front of him. Hiruzen sagged, the lines of his face becoming even more pronounced. You will not listen, as you are now. Sometimes I forget how young you still are. One day, you will understand why I did what I did, my boy. Naruto stopped himself from replying to that, to tell him to not refer to him with such familiarity. Very well. The Hokage waved his hand, the door to his office swinging open. Find me when you wish to talk and to understand. I know it may not feel like it, but I am Prue. Naruto did not let the old man finish his words, he refused to hear those words from the bastard. Like the hounds of hell were nipping at his ankles, he ran out of the room and leapfrogged the window out onto the roof, jumping off the shingles and clean across the street. He ran blindly over the rooftops, ignoring the surprised exclamations of the ninja on patrol. His body felt like it was bursting with energy, overflowing with injustice. He'd forced himself to do the right thing, sell out the last of his dreams and dignity to protect his loved ones, but where did that leave him? He cursed the day he met the old bastard, Team 7, Iruka-sensei, even Haku, who'd convinced him that strength lay in protecting others. He was back where he started. Uzumaki Naruto, Demon Fox Container, son of none, motherless, alone. The boy that stood in the shadows, neglected, the one whose name was not spoken. He had no dream, no goal, no ambition. He was nothing. He pushed himself to the limit, his muscles screaming and stretching. He savored the burn, focusing on it, going harder and faster. Like a wounded animal, he threw his head up at the moon and howled, trying to force the crushing weight that was binding his chest, grinding his ribs to dust. Bringing his hands up in a half-tiger, he channeled his chakra, bursting open the seal on his thigh, and then he was moving even faster, running, vanishing from where he was and appearing blocks away. The godforsaken Leaf Village where he'd been cursed to be born, vanished into a blur as he moved, his chakra pathways joining his muscles in their pleas for mercy. 37 times in a row he flickered, moving faster than most ninja could ever perceive, not thinking about where he wanted to go, just allowing his anger to drive him forward. He felt something pop in his ankle, but he kept pushing. He felt his calves get burnt as his chakra pathways overloaded and flooded his muscles, but he did not let himself stop. Finally, he collapsed onto wet grass, allowing his lungs to take the air they'd been screaming for. He spared himself a moment before sitting up again, half chuckling and half sobbing as he realized he was on training ground 3 before he pushed himself up and made his way to the nearest tree. He channeled his chakra like Abisu had taught him and cursed sharply as he felt his palms jolt in agony, every one of his tenketsu aching from being overloaded. It didn't matter. He abandoned his chakra and wailed on the tree with his bare fists instead, barely remembering the motions Abisu had drilled into him. He jabbed out, lightning fast, his fists automatically coming up to guard his face, his knees bending to make himself a smaller target, and then he lashed out with hooks and crossed, going faster and harder, until he was sending bits of bark flying and leaves falling in showers around him. The skin over his knuckles split open and wept rivers of blood, but he did not let himself stop, intent on enjoying the pain of his body, if he wouldn't let himself feel the hurt in his very soul. Bit of a drama queen, aren't you? Naruto didn't miss a step. He whirled around and lashed out, raining punches into the stomach of the bastard who had the galls to mock him when he was at his lowest. He moved with prejudice, hitting with a force that even Rock Lee would have been proud of. Good form, appreciated the tall man, whom the Hokage had called Jiraiya, making him one of the 3 legendary ninjas his erstwhile teacher had taught him about. The older ninja looked like he was standing in line at the grocery store for all that he was being attacked. Ibisu was right, you are a diamond in the rough. A natural fighter. Shut up. The words came out hoarse and raspy, half-choked with his blinding fury. Abandoning hand to hand, he sped through a series of seals and reared his head back like a viper, letting the hot chakra fill his throat, ignoring the way his anger made him lose his control and char his gullet. He spat out a fireball directly at the junction of the interloper's legs, uncaring of the morals or propriety. A large gloved hand came down and batted the attack away like it was nothing. The fire bullet landed on the ground and scorched the grass around it black, and Naruto was shocked enough to stop for a second and look at the white-haired giant in disbelief. Jiraiya snorted at the look on his face. You'll have to do better than a little flaming bullet to hurt me, kid. Naruto scowled. Instead of answering, he formed another, longer set of hand seals and converted the chakra raging into his core to fire, uncaring of the way it blazed uncontrollably up his stomach and his throat. Before he could open his mouth and let it explode from his body, he felt a large hand grasp around his throat. He landed heavily on the grass, coughing out smoke and retching. His throat burnt in agony until he felt a gentler touch and a rush of soothing chakra that numbed the tender flesh. I'm no Tsunade, so you'll have to let the fox sort the rest out. Props to your ambition for trying to master your opposing nature first, but using fire nature in anger, especially when you're a natural wind user, is a spectacularly bad idea. How Naruto coughed, hawking up a disgusting mess of soot and mucus. How do I know your chakra nature? Kid, like I told your little friend, always assume I know everything. Naruto glared up at the man, even though it was somewhat diminished by the fact that he barely came up to his knees from his position on the ground. Well? Asked Jiraiya, his eyes gleaming with amusement. Aren't you going to introduce yourself? I'm fuck off and leave me alone. Unfortunate, your mother must have really hated you. Now, fuck off, as I'm sure you've realized, I'm Jiraiya of the Mount Myabakuzen, so a little respect might be in order, yeah? I let the first one slide because you've had a rough day. Fuck off and leave me alone, Lord Jiraiya. Jiraiya threw his head back and laughed, his hands shaking on the stomach Naruto had just attacked like a rabid animal. You're a feisty one, aren't you? I'm sorry, I thought this was the angsty meeting for ninjas with reprimands on their files, but I guess I'll get going then. It took Naruto a moment to process his words. Wait, he gasped, you mean? But you're Jiraiya of the fucking Sannin, right? I guess that makes you a member of a really exclusive club right now, huh? Between the two of us, we've completed 162 S-class missions. Naruto gaped at that man, making him laugh again. I guess stunned awe counts as respect if I squint, said Jiraiya. Come on, kid. You think this is the first time something like this has happened? That you're Jiraiya of the Sannin? Asked Naruto dumbly. Even Ibisu had been in awe of the man who'd single-handedly fought back Hanzo the Salamander in the Second War, who'd held the border between Waterfall and Rock single-handedly in the Third War, while the Fourth had massacred the regiment at Kanabi Bridge. Correct. Then how did you? I deserted the village for half a year after the Second War, answered Jiraiya, turning up to look at the moon like it was particularly interesting that night. What? Don't look so surprised. Many ninja vanish for a while after a war, I was only the biggest name to do it. Tsunade still hasn't returned from her self-imposed exile. And no, he said, before Naruto could open his mouth, she isn't on a long-term mission to research better methods of healthcare and push the frontiers of medical techniques or whatever bullshit the academy's feeding you nowadays. Naruto snapped his lips closed. Why did you do it? He asked instead. That's not the right question. The administration didn't mind that I went AWOL for a while, the war was already over. Jiraiya paused. The correct question is what? I trained 3 ninjas your age from Rain, one of whom had a terribly powerful bloodline limit, and then returned to the village without even convincing them to defect. Rain wasn't even our ally in that war, we'd run them ragged with our skirmishes with rock and lightning. Why did you do that? Asked Naruto, his anger temporarily forsaken for the story. The moon went behind the clouds, obscuring Jiraiya's face for a moment. The giant ninja shrugged. It felt like the right thing to do in the moment. The right thing, Naruto scoffed. Yeah, you thought you were doing the right thing too, didn't you? Thought? Asked Naruto. I know I did the right thing, but it didn't stop the monkey from fucking me over anyway. No, you thought you could get the plans for the invasion on your lonesome, a team of rookie genin. Jiraiya snorted. Sure, your heart was in the right place, and you did some really impressive mental gymnastics to arrive at the location of the plans, but what were you going to do to get the plans from the One Tail? Yeah, don't bother, because you had nothing. And even if you did, it wouldn't work. Your improvisation with the makeup kid was great, nice taste in movies, I approve, he added, offhandedly. But it fell into your lap. Your mission would have been a bust the instant you ran into the little psychopath. That's not true. Yeah, Jiraiya waved his hand dismissively. Free advice, kid. Deception is the lifeblood of a great ninja, and from what I hear, you've got a knack for it. But the instant you deceive yourself is the instant you need to start digging a shallow grave for your body. Don't do it. Naruto had no reply to that. The man was brusque, his dialect rough even as he explained things, but he had a certain charisma that made it hard not to listen to him. Good. You can listen. Another piece of advice, don't ever lose that skill. Now, since I've answered your questions, given you some free advice, even lessened the horror of your burden by sharing my own sad tale, why don't you answer a couple questions for me? Lessen my burden? Naruto laughed bitterly. I don't see a Hokage's hat on your head, so don't think you're on the same level as me. That set Jiraiya off again. Kid, the older man said, between bouts of laughter, the only reason I'm not Hokage is because I refuse to wear that stupid hat. Admin would put that hat on me yesterday if they could, so I can still be. Jiraiya raised a finger. You answer my questions first. Those rain ninjas, all three of them, the Toad Sage's face turned solemn, they died. They never hurt the village, they never even made it out of their teens, from what I hear. So what's that letter still doing on my profile? Why did they never rescind it? Because it was the wrong thing to do in the first place. Challenged Naruto. Jiraiya gave him an unimpressed look. Naruto hesitated. Precedent. Jiraiya chuckled. You're a cheeky brat, aren't you? You're right. That is the right answer, but you're not off the hook. Tell me, kid, the Toad Sage peered down at him, making Naruto shift a little self-consciously. What is the good of the village? Eh? Anything that helps the village, right? Helps it? So if I tell you tomorrow that killing your friend Shikamaru's entire clan will help the village, would you do it? What the hell? How could that ever benefit the village? That's beside the point. Say I take it upon myself to kill the last Haddock so that we can recruit the explosion release bloodline from Iowa. The Hokage hasn't signed off on it, but it makes sense to me. Trackers. We've got them up the wazoo. With the Byakugan and the Aburam, you don't really need the Haddock as a tracker. He's powerful, but not better than an entire corps of versatile ninjas. A fresh clan with a powerful attacking bloodline. Invaluable. Why would you need to kill Kakashi-sensei to bring them in, anyway? Protested Naruto. Maybe they're rivals, maybe that's their criteria to join. Besides, Jiraiya pointed at him, you're missing the point on purpose. The Hokage punishing you sets down a marker fresh genin cannot run off and do what they think is good for the village, even if it really is. Good, bad, these are all subjective matters. To someone like Danzo, this decision to throw over the Haddock for a fresh bloodline would be simple 10 times out of 10. The third would refuse to do it. Who's right, who's to say? That's for you to judge. But in a world where we can breathe fire and call down storms, it means that we can't run on an individual's moral compass. There needs to be a military, a hierarchy, a clear chain of command. The instant you let a rookie run off and do your own thing is when you invite anarchy. So he put me into the ground just to stop other genin from doing what they want. Not just other genin, but anyone. But there's also a lesson to be learned from this. What do you think that is? Naruto thought about it, he really did. Not to run off on my own. Correct, but not what I'm getting at. Jiraiya huffed. I guess it was a little too soon to expect such insight from a kid. Deniability, kid. You ran a good mission, you really did. But things like this Black Ops, it's always a gamble. And rule 1 of gambling, you only bet what you can afford to lose. You do this mission with some no-name ninjas, members of Black Ops, you report to the Hokage in private, no one ever finds out. You're a hero, but no one ever knows. You do it with clan heirs, without masks or subterfuge, their parents find out, they raise hell, the entire village raises hell, you're a villain. They aren't worth more just because they're from a clan. Naruto protested. We're all the Hokage's ninja. Aren't they? Jiraiya smirked. Like I said, kid. Don't deceive yourself. Your little friends are going to be monsters one day, renowned across the nations for their daring, but outside the Sparin Yazuka and the Civi, none of them are going to be sent to do the dirty stuff. Assassination, infiltration, there's nothing they offer that other ninjas from their clans want. Only difference, they're too valuable to the structure of the village to lose. And for that matter, so are you. Because of the Naruto gestured. Yeah, that. It's a shame, because you were a shoe-in for infiltration with your smarts. For you, deception will be of a different kind. Like what? Asked Naruto curiously. That's something I'll teach you later. Oh yes, wipe that stupid look off your face, Jiraiya winked. I do plan to teach you some things. Consider it a bit of payment for good services rendered. But I don't want a downer of a student, it'll really hurt my whole aura. So tell me, what do you think you gained from this? Gained? Naruto's mouth hung open. What did I gain? I lost everything I've been working for. Didn't we just go over that? Open your eyes, kid. Name one good thing that came out of this clusterfuck. Naruto reined in his disbelief and thought about it. I guess I don't have anything to lose anymore. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes at him. I can see why they call you unpredictable. That's a dangerous mindset to have, but it's not completely wrong. Not what I expected either. Jiraiya turned and faced him fully. 8 ninjas. A civilian, let's put her aside. The new generation of Ino Shikacho. The last Ichiha. Tsumin Yazuka's kid. The Haddock, the Sarutobi, Konoha's best illusionist. You gained their respect, and for some of them, I'd say you even earned their loyalty. A favor, even, for a future time. That's not why I did it. I know, Jiraiya waved his hand casually, making Naruto snarl. But the end result is the same. Sure, you did good in the second phase of the exams, but you were still just a clever prankster to them. Tonight, you went from the guy with a wacky plan to a dependable commander in their eyes. A little too honorable for a ninja, but we really like that stuff for a profession of killers. You, my friend, he peered at the blonde, just entered the radar of some very important people. That's cold, said Naruto. They're my friends. And? Were you their friend before this? Jiraiya challenged him. You don't have to calculate every single thing you do for others, but you've also got to accept the outcomes of your actions, both good and bad. This is just one of the good. Your friends know you didn't do it to hold it over them, which is even better. But someday, you will have to. Naruto bared his teeth, silently promising himself that he never would. Admittedly, Jiraiya's words did make him feel a little warmer, but he refused to be that cold guy. Won't the village hate me even more, now? All they'll see is the reprimand in my paperwork and think the worst of me. They won't even know what we did, just that I got punished for something bad. Kid, Jiraiya said. This is a ninja village. A secret S-ranked mission isn't worth the paper it's sealed in. Ninja gossip worse than fishwives, the real story will be all across the place by the time the sun rises. I thought you'd know that better than anyone. He mimicked Naruto's gesture over his belly. What do you mean? That the only real secrets in this village, the kind that would keep you up at night, are never sealed, never put down on paper, and never known by more than 2 people. Don't worry, it never makes it out to the other nations, I make sure of that. Not a single cage knows who our Jinchuriki is, let alone that we have one. The old man waggled his fingers. As for your answer, well, I feel like you'll see it for yourself, soon enough. Jiraiya extended his hand to Naruto, who took it and lifted himself off the grass. I can't do much more for your throat, but I know a nice ice cream parlor that's open this time of the night. Since you're about to be broke as hell, I guess I can treat you just this once. I'll be leaving on another mission soon enough, gotta make sure the itty-bitty Kazukiage makes his way to Konoha without any issues. We can go over the stuff I'll show you in the meanwhile. Might even have a gift or two for you. Why are you teaching me? Asked Naruto, even though he felt warm at the prospect. Besides, I've already got a teacher. Taken care of, said Jiraiya, who reached over and ruffled Naruto's hair, leaving it a mess. Besides, there's one other thing that has come of this event, and it's something you won't realize for many years. You'll need to be prepared for it when it comes, amongst other things. Let's just say I'll help you along until then. Has anyone told you that you're super vague and annoying? More than you'd think, less than you'd expect. Where is the idiot? Hissed Ino, balling her fists. I can't believe he's late today of all days. He's probably decided to give up, Uncle Choza commented to her father behind her back, chortling. Ino ignored him completely. She'd set her own father straight over the past few days, but Choji's father seemed to take special delight in Naruto's misery. Misery that he'd piled on himself to protect the grumpy man's own son, thought Ino. I doubt it, drawled Shikaku, voicing her own thoughts. Kid's got his own problems, but he's not got any quit. Her own father wisely decided to stay quiet. After a blowout fight, Ino had spent the last week telling him in many ways how she was a ninja of the Leaf Village, not a helpless princess to be sheltered and protected. Judging from the way he'd been tiptoeing around her the past couple of days, she'd gotten her point across. "It really is very late," muttered Sakura, her green eyes roving over the grounds as if Naruto would magically pop up next to the row of contestants coming out to be cheered by the crowd. "He better be here." "He will," Ino cut in, more confidently than she felt. Her heart fluttered inside her chest, remembering the blank, empty look on Naruto's face when he made the decision to give up on his dream to protect their futures. Naruto's not going to quit. Kiba came up beside them to lean on the railing, his feral face carved into a permanent scowl. "That guy's going to be Hokage, after all." Sakura's face turned pained. "We shouldn't give him false hope, you shouldn't say things like that anymore." Choji nodded nervously from her other side. "I know what I'm saying. I won't be beaten by some quitter. Naruto's gonna turn up for sure." "He will," agreed Ino, secretly glad for Kiba's easy faith. Naruto bounces back from everything. Her cheeks felt uncomfortably warm and she turned her head quickly to avoid Sakura's curious scrutiny. "He'll definitely come." "He better," said his mother. "They're going to be ready any moment now." She clapped politely along with the others, but she was also on alert, the line of her shoulders tense as she looked around the stadium in a manner that was heavily reminiscent of a guard dog. Ino clenched her fist. The past week had been a ride and a half, from her first kiss to her first time dislodging sewers. She'd grit her teeth and done the latter, much to the surprise of her peers, only because she refused to let Naruto get ahead of her, the stupid, noble fool. Fight or not, she was going to wring his neck once she got her hands on him. Sacrificing his dream and his livelihood wasn't the sort of responsibility she'd wanted him to take. "Look." Gasped Sakura, who'd been downcast and morose all week. "It's him, he's walking out." Ino did a double take at the small figure clad in grey walking out to the middle of the grounds. She'd expected his usual bright orange, not standard issue pants with a sober green striped jacket on top. She wasn't alone in her shock. Choza choked spectacularly on the takoyaki he'd been eating. Her father stood up out of his seat and opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. "Troublesome," said Uncle Shikaku. "It seems like Jireya's been doing more than beat away snakes from the wind shadow." "What, but that's..." Choza whirled around to glare at the reticent Nara clan head. "Is it true?" "Is what true?" "Don't joke around, Shikaku," said Inoichi. "Did you know? Was it really that hard to guess? A year-long mission for Kushina, really? His surname, given in honor of a refugee? Don't make me laugh." But Choza seemed to be lost for words, flapping his jowls uselessly. A fresh wave of applause swelled the crowd. "All of them look so shocked," muttered Choji. Not just in her block, but all around the stadium, Jonin and elders were surging to their feet, their eyes on the Uzumaki standing uncharacteristically still and looking up at the stands. She spotted Hiashi Hyuga whispering furiously with an old man next to him, across from where they were sitting. "Why? They've just had their eyes open to something they've been willfully ignoring for years," answered Shikaku. Ino's father scowled, but his conflict seemed to be written clear all over his face. "I must say it was a masterstroke on Jireya's part." "A masterstroke?" Inoichi's face was pale. This could be a catastrophe if word got out. The Toad Sage controls both the incoming and outgoing whispers from the leaf with an iron fist. Besides, what's there to talk about? He isn't wearing that, just his childhood clothes. "Nobody other than the people who worked with him as a child will know," answered Uncle Shikaku. "Hey, what's the big deal?" asked Kiba, wrinkling his nose. "Why is everybody acting like Naruto walked out butt naked to fight the Hyuga bastard?" Shikaku smiled. "The little Uzumaki's just looking very similar to the last genin who got a formal reprimand on his record. I suppose it's something of a statement from him." "The last genin to get a formal reprimand? Who was it?" Ino asked suspiciously. "He's not around anymore, so it doesn't really matter." Shikaku waved her off, signaling that they wouldn't talk about it. Ino scowled, but Sakura spoke up. "What was he reprimanded for?" She straightened her back. Lord Nara, sir." Surprisingly, it was her father who answered, even as the proctor dismissed the other genin and Naruto and Neji squared off. "Good question, how do I put it? He saved a princess from some cloud ninja by himself, without bothering to notify Anbu or taking any backup along." Inoichi and Shikaku both smirked. "He always acted cooler than he really was." "Fine, if you don't want to tell us, don't," huffed Ino. "Naruto's going to kick Neji's ass better than any wannabe hero ever could." Somehow, this sent the two men into a fit of laughter, while Uncle Choza just stared silently at the arena, pale and unmoving like he was in the middle of a seance. She turned her back on them deliberately. "Will he really win, though?" asked Sakura quietly. "Neji is stronger than even Sasuke," his were saying. "He has to," answered Ino. She refused to think of the consequences if he didn't. "He will," she added. Sakura nodded. "We need to put our faith in him. I swear I'll treat him to ramen every day if he manages to pull this off." Ino laughed, but she noticed the way Sakura's eyes flicked up to the heavens in silent prayer and promise. She clasped her hands together like she was brimming with excitement but secretly copied her rival. For all of them, but most of all, for himself, Naruto needed to be promoted. It was the least he deserved after everything he'd done for them. Ino silently prayed that he would find a way to match his talent at trickery. This would be nothing short of a deathmatch, and there would be no chance to repeat his actions against Kiba. "Come on, idiot," she muttered, shaking her legs restlessly. The guards around the place activated their jutsu, and a barrier went up, and Niji's voice became audible all around the stadium. "You are destined to lose," the Hyuga's voice carried clearly across the seats. "You are the dead last of your cohort, talentless, from a clan who are nothing but dust in memory." Before the might of the Hyuga, on the giant screen, Niji activated his Byakugan and stared coldly at the blonde. "You are fated to lose. You should just give up." "Amazing," answered Naruto dryly, refusing to react in a manner foreign to those who knew him. "The Hyuga bloodline limit." Niji jerked his head in apparent acknowledgement. "The ability to spew horseshit instead of words when you open your mouth." Kiba guffawed with laughter as Niji lost his temper and charged. Naruto darted back and a small army of clones appeared between him and Niji, getting mowed down as the Hyuga dispatched them with prejudice. "Those are shadow clones," Choza gasped. "A genin, making corporeal clones." Naruto retreated all the way back to the walls and brought his fingers together to make more clones. "He's coordinating them," observed Sakura. The clones broke into groups, engaging Niji in close combat, while others leapt back and showered the Hyuga with shuriken. "His hand-to-hand is also a lot better," said Choji. "Look." Naruto, or his clones, was moving faster than Ino had ever seen, swinging and dodging and moving in and out of Niji's reach. The Hyuga was still destroying them with ease, but they were still attacking him in groups of 2 and 3, flanking and trying to come up from behind. "He's making them fight like a team of genin," she said aloud. "Look." One of the clones swept his feet low, trying to push Niji off balance. Another clone jumped off his back and aimed a heel at his head. Niji jerked aside and then twisted sharply to avoid and parry a brace of shuriken. And then a third clone came in, his fists raised in front of his face, before striking 2 jabs straight into Niji's chin and darting out, getting popped despite his best effort at evasion. 3 more clones immediately jumped into the fray. Kiba oofed in sympathy. "Niji's going to feel that," he said. "Even back at the academy, the bastard hit like a ton of bricks to the face." Sakura nodded in agreement. Ino watched in some disbelief, despite her previous statement, as the dead last of their class took the fight to Niji and actually kept him on his toes. "Lee said Niji's the strongest genin of our generation," said Sakura. "But genin working together can take out a chunin, and Niji's still just a chunin." The pink-haired girl smiled. Naruto. Down in the arena, Niji had had enough. With a growl of anger, he shifted up a gear. His hands blurred as he took out the entire group of clones near him with lightning-fast fingers, then charging through the smoke at the outer ring. He darted under the trees scattered in the center of the arena and then, "It's a trap," crowed Kiba. The morning sun glinted down on the suddenly visible threads of ninja wire as a clone pulled, and suddenly, an entire web of glistening wire sprung up around the Hyuga. Ino leaned forward in anticipation. Niji reacted immediately. Flinging his hands out around him, he spun on the spot, visible blue chakra bursting out around him to form a dome that pushed away the wires and easily weathered the storm of kunai that flung itself at him. "I don't believe it," gasped Inoichi as the Hyuga section of the crowd burst into whispers. "That's the main house's move." Naruto sprung into action, a short tanto appearing in his left hand while he made a half-tiger with the other and vanished in a body flicker. "He's fast," gasped Choza. "No, he's slipped." Ino groaned as Naruto appeared just as Niji stopped his move, but seemingly balanced and tripped backwards as he came out of the body flicker. "No!" exclaimed Sakura. "Watch." Silver flashed out and Naruto thrust his sword forward. Niji spun again, his dome blowing the other, charging clones away, but Naruto had already rolled to his knees and slipped back with another flicker. "Did he get him?" asked Choji anxiously, munching loudly on a bag of chips. "He has," said Ino. "Look at his sword." The ends of the weapon were dripping crimson. Naruto tossed it to a clone and made more hand seals with his favorite cross-sign. Niji came out of his defense and hissed, his pale eyes looking down to assess the damage. The clones immediately charged forward, forcing him back into the fight. "When did he get the sword?" asked Sakura. "Even in our training sessions, he didn't have it." "You've been training with the 2 of them?" Ino asked sharply. "Not for the past week," Sakura admitted. "I think he's been avoiding us." "Well, we won't let him, will we?" asked Kiba. "That idiot better know we're with him, even if he's getting stronger and stronger." "Ma. I need a sword, pronto." "For what? Cutting Akamaru's meat up for him." Tsume shot back. "It's a smart tactic, though. Blondie's a shrimp, so it increases his reach without putting himself in range for a counterattack. The Hyuga are famously open-handed fighters, he's done his research." "The Hyuga's a genius, still," insisted Choza. "For a branch member to learn the Kaiten, who knows what else he's got up his sleeve." Neji fumbled another block and Naruto's clone jumped in and kicked the back of his knee in, bravely taking a hit to the throat for his efforts. Neji stumbled again, but still kept up his defense. The way I see it, Uzumaki's winning, admitted Inoichi. He's fast enough, of course he is, the little shit to go in for blitz tactics, and he makes up a difference in speed, timing and great blocking by his clones. Enough. Neji roared, silencing their conversation. Your weak efforts will not defeat me. Hands lashing out, he swept a swathe of destruction through the doppelgangers. The clone with the sword brought his hands together and 10 more clones appeared. These eyes can see you, mole chakra. He fell for it. Gasped Sakura, her words mercifully blocked by the barrier. 8 trigrams. 64 palms. The crowd roared again as Neji surged forward, his hands moving so fast that Ino could only make out the blur of his limbs. Clones popped like party balloons until he reached the clone with the sword and slammed his palms into its chest. The clone popped, the real Naruto brought his hands together from somewhere to Ino's left and the ground under Neji exploded. The Hyuga was sent flying, clones piling for him, pulling out kunai and shuriken. The trap underneath a fake out, Shikaku clapped his hands slowly. Masterful. That's the promotion in the bag, eh, Choza? Uncle Choza swallowed. Careful, Shikaku. 46 members of my clan, I do not forget. Ino's ears perked up. Not here, said her father, throwing her a dirty look. Ino scowled. But his son isn't to blame and maybe it's time to understand that. You're not going to tell us, are you? Asked Ino flatly. All 3 men shook their head. Well, guess I'll just relay all of this to Shikamaru, Ino said brightly as Naruto launched Neji into the air and then sent him back down in a devastating combo. The Hyuga crashed in a cloud of dust and earth, barely getting up on his feet before Naruto was on him. He's gotten so strong, said Choji in wonder. To think he's come so far since the academy. All it took was a good teacher, said Sakura, her eyes downcast. Naruto's leaving us all behind. Neji seemed to be of the same mindset. How? He gasped out, desperately fending off another salvo of clones. How are you beating me? You're nothing, you're a failure, how can you? Naruto was lost in the crowd by now. His clones only attacked, over and over again. Neji didn't move fast enough and a kunai slashed through his calves, sending him down to one knee. One of the many Narutos strolled up to him, bloody sword in hand. I might be a failure, but I don't hide behind fate because I'm too afraid to try and change things, he said, lifting his sword like an executioner. I will achieve my dreams, no matter what. Kiba whooped, but it changed to a cry of horror as Neji roared and lunged forward in one last blow, his palm slamming into Naruto's stomach. Naruto's face crumpled in pain and shock and Ino screamed in panic as well, watching Naruto's plan crumble in a single moment of laxness. Naruto popped into a cloud of smoke. The sword in his hand did the same. The real Naruto put his sword to Neji's throat from behind, the sharp edge resting cleanly on the Hyuga's pale throat. Neji tiredly tried to bring his hands together for a substitution, but 2 more clones leapt forward and slashed at his hands, making him cry out in pain. I guess I'll keep it short then, said the Uzumaki, his voice even, as he raised the kunai in his other hand. Fuck fate. The ring of the kunai came down on Neji's head and the Hyuga prodigy crashed face forward into the ground. Silence fell around the arena as everyone tried to process what they'd just seen. Neji Hyuga is unable to continue. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki from the Leaf Village. And then Ino was screaming and shouting with the rest of the crowd, yelling herself hoarse as the barriers came down and a wave of sound swept over the arena and rolled over the blonde standing victorious over his fallen enemy. What if Naruto trained by Shikaku for Chunin exams? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.